And there's a shot at a score off the left board. The face-off win. Slavin took the shot, and the Predators' season is over. The Hurricanes at 1:06 of the overtime period beat Nashville 4-3.
Oh, a shot through the screen, and Slavin, just a quick wrister from the left point, beats Saros over the glove, and that was quick, and it is quiet.
And a stunner, an absolute stunner.
It did feel that way last night. Predators will lose in overtime. Season over, series over, on to 2021-2022. Stillman Company, it's a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Caroline Fenton is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello.
Ian is here. Hello, Ian. Congratulations to both of you guys for saying before the series, Canes in 6. Because, well, the Canes won in 6. I said Canes in 5. You guys said Canes in 6. So I guess the way I want to do this is we can discuss the game. We can discuss the series. We can discuss the season. It's a Fireball Hot Take Friday, so it's kind of your day talking about you, the listener. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the phone lines. Your reaction, 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And I am not torn about how I feel, but I will say this on the front end. I think you can have it whichever way you want to have it about this team. So if you want to look at it and say, hey, this team was terrible 12 weeks ago, and we thought that they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league and start a 3-year rebuilding process, and all of a sudden they went toe-to-toe through 6 games and 4 overtimes and toe-to-toe with a Stanley Cup contender. This team is that close. You can make that argument.
Technically 6 overtimes.
Yes, but I meant 4 games that went to overtime.
Yes.
But you can make that argument today. I think that you can legitimately feel glass half full, glass half empty. Like, there are certain things that a lot of people feel on this show that I just don't think are realistic. So the people that want to pay Corey Davis $16 million to play wide receiver, that's not realistic. Or that want to trade a first-round pick for Julio Jones, that's not realistic. Or when it comes to how to rebuild the Predators, the people that say, just get rid of Duchesne and Johansson, it's not totally realistic. It's a lot more complicated than that. But if you want to feel about this team like, hey, they showed at the end of the year, they showed that they can be a force. They showed that they've got the potential. You can feel that way. If you want to look at this team and feel like they're not good enough, and the answer as to how they're going to get good enough is not in front of you, you're allowed to feel that way too. Again, today is your day, so we'll take your reaction. I'm going to start here, though. And in sports, I've worked in the media long enough now to know what all the cliches are. So anytime I hear a radio host, and I'm guilty of this sometimes too, but anytime I hear a radio host say, it'll be interesting to see, like, everybody says that. Of course it'll be interesting to see. We'll all watch. We all do watch. That's why we're listening to what we watch about. Of course it's interesting to see. But we hear radio hosts all the time say, it'll be interesting to see. And another thing we hear sports commentators say a lot is, it's all about who wants it more. Who wants it more? Well, I'm going to just use this as an issue for me. 6 games. 6 third periods. The most important part of a game. Every time we see football players working out in the weight room, we always hear, fourth quarter, fourth quarter, fourth quarter. When the going gets tough, who wants it more? Game 1, Carolina, 3-0 in the third period. Game 2, Carolina, 2-0 in the third period. Games 3 and 4, and you know what happened in 3 and 4? Mm-hmm. They won. 1-1 tie, 1-1 tie. Game 5, 1-0 Canes. Game 6, 1-0 Canes. When the going got tough in the most critical moments of the series, the Carolina Hurricanes beat the Nashville Predators. And I was incredibly bothered last night in the third period with how similar that third period with a 1-goal lead was to the previous game's third period. And I just felt the entire time like it wasn't sustainable. I kept looking up at the scoreboard, and I saw like 16 minutes to go in the game. And I'm like, uh-oh. That is too much time. 16 minutes to go. And then I look back up at the scoreboard after I felt like Carolina had about 6 chances and Saros stopped all of them. And there'd be 14:30 left in the game, and I'm like, that's too much time. And then it was 12 minutes, and they got another 5 shots or whatever, and I'm like, that's too much time. I understand the idea. The margins in this series were razor thin. You go to overtime in 4 different games. It's a really close series. And the Predators, with some bounces, maybe could have won another game in this series. But I think the third period tells us all we needed to know. Not just last night's third period, but almost every third period. When push came to shove in this series, the Carolina Hurricanes answered the bell. They answered the bell in Game 1 in the third period. They answered the bell in Game 3 in the third period when Brent Pesce scored late to send the game to overtime. They answered the bell in the third period on Monday night or Tuesday night or whatever night it was, and they answered the bell last night in the third period, and there wasn't enough of a pushback from the Predators. And I think the biggest issue that I have with this is why. Why in every third period did the Carolina Hurricanes outwork you, outplay you, and just quite frankly, just give you the business in almost every third period? If it wasn't for Saros, and I'm talking about these third periods, 3-0 Carolina, 2-0 Carolina, 1-1 tie, 1-1 tie, 1-0 Carolina, 1-0. These could have been 3 and 4-0 Carolina kind of games in the third period. Saros was on his tail the whole time. So I wonder what the why is. Was it coaching? Was it Carolina outcoached the Predators? I think that's probably somewhere on the table. I certainly think Hines got in his own way throughout the course of the series. As I said the other day, I thought the strategy so far in the series was, well, awful for a lot of different reasons. Was it the fact that Carolina has better players and that really showed in those third periods? And I will say this, what's the one thing that I consistently harp on with this team about? I don't think this team will be a Stanley Cup contender until they land a big boy forward. And while Carolina is not Tampa Bay in terms of how many big boy forwards they have one of them. And did you see what he did at the end of the game last night? You can keep throwing Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg out there as a first line, and that's fine, but they're not big boy forwards. So is that the issue here? I do wonder. Saros played great in the series. This is not a knock on Saros. I do wonder, though, does Pekka steal, not this Pekka, not 38-year-old Pekka, but 2017 Pekka? Does he steal a couple of these games that Saros couldn't? Saros played great in Game 5, but does Pekka make that save on Natchez? You win 2-1 or get an empty netter to win 3-1? Does Pekka hold the door shut? I'm talking peak Pekka. Does Pekka slam the door shut in the third period last night? And I don't know the answer to that. I'm just saying. Because I thought Saros played great in the series, but it wasn't the same kind of special we're used to from Pekka. I'm sorry. And I don't mean any disrespect to Saros. I'm just laying out all of the different elements as to why it seems like when it was really its tightest, outside of the double overtimes at Bridgestone Arena, in which I believe the crowd had just as much a hand in the Predators winning those games as they did themselves, why in those big, crucial moments, Carolina seemed to always come out on top. And not only did they always seem to come out on top in this series, I mean, they lived in the Predators' zone in the third periods in this series. Why? What did they do? How was it that Rod Brind'Amour calls a set piece off of a draw, Yakov Trenin gets lost, and all of a sudden Dougie Hamilton's on the back door for the game-tying goal? How? Like, how is that? Is that a coaching mistake? Is that Brind'Amour out-coaching Hines, knowing how Trenin was going to react, so Brind'Amour dials up the set piece? To me, these are all questions. And so, again, you can start it wherever you want to start it. For me, I think that the first round, this group, without a peak Pekka Rinne, this is what they max out at, is the first round. Because let's think about it. Pekka Rinne was at his best in the 2017 playoffs and in the 2018 season. And in 2018, he won the Vezina Trophy. He was the best goalie in the league. Since then, first round, bubble. First round, bubble, first round. They played hard. They got talent. They're not some scrub team. The Predators aren't. But I get the vibe that the first round is what this group is. So that's kind of where I'm starting today. And again, it's your day. It's a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Caroline, we'll get your quick reaction in here, and then I say we go to the people today because it's their day to react. Your thoughts on the series, 615-737-1025. Caroline, what do you have?
Yeah, I mean, this series was surprising in the best possible way because I did pick the Canes in 6 in the beginning because I thought that the Predators could steal a game or two, win 2 at home or steal 1 on the road. But I didn't think that the Predators would play to this level.
Sure.
We discussed it yesterday that we really thought that it was a David and Goliath kind of matchup with the Predators and the Hurricanes, and they proved that it very much so wasn't.
Sure.
So I do have to give them credit for that. And I am very excited for this team and how far they went this season because this is not how good they were supposed to be. However, I feel like there are some serious changes that need to be made. So if you're a fan and you're thinking, I'm upset, but I'm proud of this team, but I want more, I think that is totally valid.
And I do think, again, we need to think about it like this. 3 first-round exits in a row. And, yeah, they've been kooky and weird and whichever way you want to have it. I mean, the only series in which they played in the first round in which they just had no, that they weren't really all that competitive was the Dallas series. That in 2019, that Dallas team was much better than them. The Predators were sluggish, terrible on the power play, all of those things. The Arizona series, not their finest moment by any stretch, but at the same time, that was all kind of weird and kooky too. And then this one, I mean, this was honestly, again, I don't, to your point, Caroline, the Predators have issues. Mm-hmm. This was a great series.
It was a great series.
I mean, it was a
so
great
fun
series
to watch. They played their butts off. It was a very fun series to watch.
So here's what we're going to do. We're going to take your calls today, 615-737-1025. Your reaction to anything that involves the finality of the 2021 Nashville Predators, whether it is how well you felt like they played at the middle to end of the season, how you felt they played in this playoff run, if this team's not good enough, and you can pinpoint whatever you want to pinpoint. This is on you, 615-737-1025. Fireball Hot Take Friday. We'll get Ian's thoughts. Ian, if you got a quick thought, let's get that in there, and then we'll get right to the phones.
Well, it was a great series, and I kind of, went along with your third period theme there about how to find the balance between, was it the Preds getting conservative and cautious at the end of the game versus the Canes being able to just ramp it up an extra notch that the Preds couldn't match. So to me, towards the end of those third periods and towards the end of the games, that's what I was trying to kind of figure out the balance between.
Your reactions next, 615-737-1025. I see the calls already loaded up. We're to them next. Stillman Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. We are live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's ESPN 1025 The Game. And we're streaming on the Game Nashville app.
Yeah, it's tough to end that way so abruptly, and really proud of this group. I mean, where we came from at the start of the year to how we started playing to where we are now, and give them credit. They played a great series. But I think this group showed that we have a lot of character in that room. We have a lot of talent, a lot of potential, and we work really hard, and it got us this far. And obviously we wanted to go farther, but 4 overtime games in a row, and that's a really good hockey team over there, and we showed that we can hang with them.
Ryan Ellis last night presenting the grade the Predators on a curve argument, which you're allowed to do today. Today is your day, I promise, right to your phones. But the grade the Predators on the curve element or argument is Stillman Company, Fireball Hot Take Friday. The grade on a curve argument is, hey, the Predators were dead in the water 12 weeks ago. I mean, hey, we thought they should sell at the trade deadline. Look at them toe-to-toe, 4 overtime games, so close. They are. Look at everything they did. No one expected them to be in the series, and look how they did. That's grading on a curve. And you can grade on the curve. Today is your day. I don't grade on the curve.
And that is kind of what I expected from a lot of Preds fans was once they got to this point and the Predators got knocked out, then they were willing to fall back and say, look, we weren't even supposed to be here in the first place. Yep. You know, we're going to celebrate that fun run that we had, as you should, because it was a very fun run, and it's okay to enjoy it while also wanting more. It's okay to accept the fact that you want more than just getting past the first round of the playoffs.
Can I tell you that I didn't get that sentiment from the fans, but I got that sentiment from the players last night, not the coach. I didn't get it from the coach last night, but I did get it from the players. Let's go to your phone. 615-737-1025, Fireball Hot Take Friday. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Matt is going to kick us off here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Thank you for calling the show. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Jared. Appreciate you and the crew taking my call.
Thanks.
I don't understand how there are still fans in Nashville that think that going to 6 games against the Canes in which you push it 2 overtime games is somehow a success. And really, I don't have any great love for John Hines as the coach. I think he did the best that he could with the roster that he was given. But really my anger is an amalgamation of everything that I've seen in this team in the last few years. It's David Poile. David Poile has shown that he can't put together a championship roster. And not that he ever could, but he's really proved that he can't put together a championship roster. And he said it best when he fired Laviolette last year. Sometimes you have to fire a coach because you can't fire 29 players. Well, you fired the coach, you brought in somebody else, you brought in your guy, and here we are again with these same nagging issues, a flaccid power play, stars not showing up when the other team is, jumping on the back of our goaltender and having them drag us kicking and screaming into overtime, where really Uzi Saros was the only person who looked like he belonged out there on the ice in playoff hockey. And I've been following the team for almost 24 years. I don't have it in me to watch the same thing happen year after year and to have people bury their head in the sand. I just want to see David Poile gone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Matt, I appreciate your call. I will say this, and this is my opinion, and you can run with it however you want. I think that if this were a democracy of Predator fans and they got to vote, I think they would vote to move on from David Poile. And again, that's my opinion, so I could be wrong. But again, and it's not a democracy, but if it were, I do believe that the way that the caller just felt right there was very similar to how the fans feel. I don't think I've hid how I feel here on the program, and I have a ton of respect for David Poile, but I do believe that it is time to move on. And I will, at 5 o'clock today, lay out a plan. You know, one thing that kind of bothers me, to the caller's point, is I do feel like the Nashville media shies away from the Poile discussion. Now, I think that, and I really mean this, because I think I've talked to enough people in the media that in Nashville who really sway the discussion, and I don't think they want to go there. I think they were willing to go there in February of this year. When Adam Vingan asked David about his job status in The Athletic, I think that was when they were kind of willing to go to it. Now I talk to people about David, media people, and I talk about David, and it's just this, well, they won't do anything. Well, I don't know what they'll do. I don't even know I know Herb Fritz is the guy in charge, but I don't even know him. So I don't know how am I supposed to know what somebody I don't know is going to do? I have no idea. But everybody's like, oh, but they're not going to do anything. But that doesn't mean to me that we shouldn't make a big deal about it or we shouldn't discuss it in our own proper channels. I mean, I think that's the role of the media. I really do. It's like I knew John Hines wasn't going to take Ben Harper out of the lineup. And I knew he wasn't going to put Roman Josi on the penalty kill. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to discuss it because I think those are things that need to happen. That's my job as an analyst. So I think that the way that caller felt, and I don't think that caller, and we got a bunch more to get to, I don't think he represents all the Preds fans, but I do think that when you have big picture Preds discussions, I do think that with the fans, it centers around Poyle. And I feel like the media doesn't go there in large part because they don't think that anything will happen, but I'm still not sure why you wouldn't go there, but that's just my opinion. Let's go to Steven, who's up next here on Stillman Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Steven.
Hey, thank you so much. So first off, I just want to say that the series was very entertaining, and I've been a Predators fan since day one, and it was fun to watch, and it was great, coming out of COVID and being in the arena, and I don't want to lose that. My topic is maybe a little different. I'm really, really worried about Roman Josi. Once again, we had a fourth line guy, Hancock's not a plug, but, hits him hard in the board, hits his head in the board, 6, 7, 8 concussions. I got to tell you, I actually, the work I do is rehabilitation work with people with head injury, and he needs to quit. I'm sorry. The league won't protect him. We saw the Dickinson hit with Dallas. This is really, really serious, and he is so much fun to watch. Such an amazing player. Oh, and by the way, I think, the ice tilted even more in their favor after he went out. And I wouldn't ever say Brendan Moore would say to his guy, hey, go injure that dude. But goodness gracious, it's just horrible. Final thought, and I'll let you react. By the way, I find you very entertaining. You make me mad, which I think is probably your shtick. But anyway, the other thing is you were talking about forwards, right? So I want to mention some forwards. Okay, McDavid, Draisaitl, Crosby, Malkin, Gensel, Ovechkin, Backstrom. How are they doing right now? So it's not only about your
how many cups forwards. Do they have?
Okay, McDavid and Draisaitl.
We're not going to go through all of them, Stephen. Thank you for your call.
I'm just saying.
We're not going to go through all of them. But think about this. Thank you for your call, Stephen. Think about this. Tampa Bay won the Cup last year, right?
Mm-hmm.
How good are their forwards?
Very good.
Okay. The year before that, St. Louis won it. Now, that was a hot team, hot goaltender, but Vladimir Tarasenko's big boy forward. And Ryan O'Reilly, really different player.
Pat Maroon, who is now on the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yeah, but he's more of like a role, like a, big body, push you around, fight you kind of guy. But I know what you mean. Then you go 2018, Ovechkin.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, big boy forward. 2017, Pittsburgh, big boy forward. 2016, Pittsburgh. 2015, Chicago. They all have high-end forwards. All of them, except for maybe that 19 Blues team, but I think Tarasenko's a big boy forward. So, you could sit there and tell me that all these guys are eliminated. Guess what? Half the teams in the league are getting eliminated as soon as you start the playoffs anyway. We just had Boston, that's got 3 big boy forwards, take on Washington, that's got 2. So somebody's getting eliminated. But I would disagree with that. The Josi concussion thing, I do think it's an issue. I do think it is an issue going forward because Josi has been concussed and in some ugly ways over the years. I remember they played the Bruins in 2016 here at Bridgestone, and Josi took a hit into the boards that literally, I think I was on the other side of the ice, and it literally made me shiver. And the next day they traded for Cody McLeod. And I was like, okay, they're bringing Cody McLeod in because they need somebody to go in there and punch somebody if you're going to do that. And now we've seen Josi take shots like that too many times over the years. I am concerned about concussion issues and Roman Yossi. Outside of that, I don't have anything to offer other than I have concerns, and I'm not about to play doctor on the radio, especially neurosurgeon, neurologist, not really my strong suit here. 615-737-1025. We are right back to your reaction again. I didn't know if that was much of a reaction other than does the last caller think that the Predators don't need a high-end forward?
That's kind of what it sounded like, but I don't know how you can look at this past series and even this entire season as a whole and think that the Predators can make it more of a run for the cup without one.
615-737-1025. We are back to your phones coming up next. Plus, there is one thing that I do feel like I need to address about this series, and we will do that next. Stillman Company, it's ESPN 1025 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app. John, you talked about guys getting experience in this series. Dante Fabro did not dress or play at all in this series. You talked about guys getting better in the offseason. Are you still high on Dante's future and where he fits in with this organization?
Yes, for sure. Dante's he is a real important part of the organization moving forward. And I think, we shouldn't forget he's a young guy. He came out of college and played, and I think he did some good things. He did good things last year when we were here together with him. I thought there were parts of the season this year he was doing really well. You come down the stretch and he gets hurt, and then it comes in, into the playoff series. And, Dante's a big guy. I think this is experience and talking with him, understanding what the situation is. And we're expecting a really big summer out of him. Sometimes a little bit of adversity when you go through as a young player, it's important to learn. And sometimes it's important to learn how hard the NHL is. And there's always players coming, and, there's always situations that you've got to be able to play at a high level consistently. And Dante is a really good player. He's an unbelievable kid. I think he's dealt with this experience the right way. In my conversations with him, we're expecting a really good exit meeting with him, and expecting a big summer out of him. And, we need Dante to come back and be a big-time player for us in the fall.
So John Hines is not giving up on Dante Fabro, but I have a hard time with the lineups that John Hines put out there in this series. And I do want to get to your phones, and I see them lined up, and I will. But let me just say this. There are certain coaches in sports who, like, for example, I'm a big Atlanta Braves fan. Their manager, Brian Snitker, I think he's a great manager. So over the course of 162 games, I think he's great at managing the team. And those players would literally take a bullet for him. And so even though when the guy gets into the playoffs and even during the season, his bullpen and bench management, terrible. But I can live with it because I know that over 162, the players love him and they'll fight for him, and he gets the most out of him. I know Hines is a good coach because I saw how he turned the team around. I don't know how the players feel about him. And I do think that should be investigated. How do the players feel? Like, would they, sacrifice for Hines? And I don't know the answer to that. His management of the roster in this series was terrible. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be Johnny Hot Take. I know it is Fireball Hot Take Friday. I'm not trying to be Johnny Hot Take. I'm not trying to be. It was terrible. It was terrible at the start, thinking it'd be a good idea to try to beat the Carolina Hurricanes when they get the last change by putting Matthew Olivier and Tanner Jeannot in the lineup at the same time. It was terrible running Eric Goodbranson out there the first two games. It was terrible keeping Nick Cousins on the bench for the first two games, who might have been the most effective forward the Predators had in the series. It was terrible stashing Matt Duchene on the bench for the game 1 and 2 before finally moving him up to the first line, where Duchene probably played some of his best hockey as a Predator, and Duchene had been asking for it. It was terrible keeping Ben Harper in there. It was terrible keeping Roman Josi on the penalty kill. I mean, I'm not saying that Hines is a bad coach, because there's a lot that goes into coaching that isn't just strategy. But I thought his strategy in this series, we talked about it, both the power play, the penalty kill, the strategy was terrible in this series. And so if you're going to continue on with Hines as coach, which I think they are, then either that's got to get better, or you've got to give him such a good team that he can't mess it up. There are some guys that, when certain teams I like, put them into the game, whether it's football or, baseball with a guy in the bullpen, or football when the Titans had Dion Lewis and they'd run him out there, I'd be like, oh, no. I mean, Hines, he can't not put Ben Harper in the game. And Ben Harper, poor guy, because we're crushing on him, but he sucks. I mean, he really sucks. Last night, he left the puck, was behind the net. I don't know if this was on a penalty kill or not. He was behind the net. This was right before the 5-on-3. Harper just laid it right in front of the slot, like trying to clear the puck out from behind the net. Just put it right in front of your own slot. Like, what? Then the penalty that led to the, I want to say the first Aho goal. The penalty was on Matt Benning, but it was because Benning and Harper couldn't get the puck out of the zone. And they could never get, for the entire series, they could never get the puck out of the zone. And they couldn't get the puck out of the zone because Harper can't skate fast enough to get to the puck. And then when he gets the puck, he can't do anything with it. And he's big, but he didn't really hit anybody. So honestly, I know I keep harping on Harper, but there's about 7 different things I do want to say that in this series. And I don't know if it makes a difference or not. I don't know. Do you win one of these overtimes with a better lineup out there? Him taking Tolvanen out of the lineup last night, I thought was ridiculous.
My jaw dropped when I saw that he was not going to be dressing for this game.
I thought that it should be, like, this is one of those things, like, just note it for the record that I am saying that I thought the roster management in this series was atrocious. And I don't mean that to be rude. I don't mean that to be over the top. I thought it was terrible. Again, I think he's a good coach. I do. I think John Hines is a good coach. I need to know if the players like playing for him. I think that's one thing that I do wonder is how do the players feel about Hines? And then the other thing was, oh my goodness, the roster management of this series was atrocious. Let's go back to your phones. As promised, Casey up next on Hines. Thank you for calling on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Go ahead, Casey.
Hey, Jared and guys, thanks for taking my call. I was thinking the exact same thing. I thought the roster management and the overall decision-making from Hines with the roster this series was awful. We lost the first game with Richardson in over Tolvanen. I don't know how we thought in an elimination game that would be a great decision. And then, again, not playing Fabro. Like, the series was close enough without Fabro on the ice. I just wonder how it would have gone with someone of Fabro's skill on that third pairing. And then right there at the third period when we had the 3-2 lead, Yossi gets injured 5 minutes in, and Hines wants to play a 1-3-1 trap game against the best offense in the league, which, of course, didn't work. But, the roster management made me lose all faith in Hines. Thanks for taking the call, guys.
Yep, thank you, Casey. I don't know, and this is the other thing, too. Like, I don't think I'm the only person that feels that way about the roster management. And you heard what the caller said. I'm not going to say I lost all faith in Hines because of the roster management. I do worry that John Hines tried to be the smartest guy in the series. I do worry that. Again, he's the coach. He can do whatever he wants, but I thought the roster management was atrocious. And I go back to the Fabro thing. You think Fabro believes what he said? And I don't know Fabro that well. Do you think Fabro believes what Hines said after the game last night about how much they believe in him after they stashed him on the bench for 6 games of a series in which they ran out Ben Harper and Eric Goodbranson? Because Joe Rexrode likes to pretend as if this is just, hey, this is a message to Dante that he needs to get better, and so Dante shouldn't be upset about it, and Dante should be better. I totally agree Fabro should be better. I don't even love Fabro. I don't even know if Fabro is a guy you want to extend long-term. He's an RFA this year. I mean, I think you have to because you need top 4 defensemen, and you can't just go get another one. But I'm not in love with Fabro. He makes too many mistakes. But when we get into the semantics of left shot, right shot, and I'm looking at Ben Harper, who literally cannot play hockey in the NHL, I know that Fabro's thinking the same thing. He's got to be thinking the same thing. It's common sense, right?
And if I'm Dante Fabro, I'm thinking, okay, you keep saying that you believe in me. You keep saying that you're excited for my future in this team. Then prove it. You can say a lot of things, but prove it to me. And the fact that John Hines is saying, well, he needs to get better. He needs to get faster. What about Ben Harper? I mean, you're going to tell me that Dante Fabro skates slower than Ben Harper?
That's a take. That is, I mean, and you're right. You're 100% right. Even the Tolvanen thing. Like, if you are Ellie Tolvanen, how do you feel about being benched for Brad Richardson? And I go back to Tolvanen. Tolvanen made a play in Game 5 where I thought he was going to chip the puck in, get off. He fired it right at the net. It set up Ryan Johansson for a beautiful chance, and Johansson in the slot missed the net. Okay. Like, at least Tolvanen gave you a little pop in this series. I struggled with the lineups all throughout the series. Paul is up next and has been waiting very patiently on the herd line. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Paul.
Hey, Jared. Hey, man, I'm going to echo what you're already saying, but this weird obsession with starting the herd line and it plays into roster management. It's driving me insane. And the fact that the games were so close just makes it worse. Tanner Jeannot had more 5-on-5 ice time than Philip Forsberg. And to watch an overtime go down where Forsberg, Duchesne, and Johansson never touch the ice because you don't roll them out there to begin with. It's just like they don't believe they give them the best chance, and that seems insane. No other team does that. Do they? Do other teams roll out their fourth-line grinders because they like how they feel, like how they set the tone, or do you put the guys on there that have the best chance to win? I know that we want guys to step up and be big boy forwards, but they certainly don't get the opportunity, it seems like. For them not to be double shifting in the third and out there starting the overtime drives me absolutely insane. Insane.
Paul, I appreciate your call. I mean, again, that could be all about matchups. I didn't look at who Carolina rolled out there to start the overtime period. I didn't look out. I mean, that's when you get the last change. That's true. When you get the last change, you kind of get to make those decisions, whatever. But, who starts the game doesn't really bother me. I've never really cared about that. The ice time thing is starting to bother me. John Hines doesn't want to use Roman Josi on the penalty kill. We looked at guys, the high-end forwards and how when Hines got hired, their ice time went down significantly. I mean, I just, again, I'll stand by what I said about I just thought that the roster management and maybe it was like this all year and we just don't put it under the microscope like we do in the playoffs because obviously everything is more intensified. Maybe you can explain to me, well, the reason they did this on a Tuesday night game against Tampa Bay with Rene and net was because, okay, fine. But, yeah, I didn't agree with it. I first guessed it, didn't like it. Second guessed it, didn't like it. Here we are today, don't like it. And I think that's either got to get better or you just have to have such a good team that it doesn't matter. Like those college football teams or basketball teams that are loaded. Like, Calipari's going to screw up coaching. You just need to give Calipari such a good team that he can't lose with it. 615-737-1025. And again, we will get back to your phones. I see them loading up, and a lot of them are about the coach. So it's all on the table today. 615-737-1025. Stillman Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. We are delivered by TriStar Moving. I love TriStar Moving. That's right. You know that those guys are my official movers. When I moved in November, I used TriStar Moving. Had never heard of them. And I used TriStar Moving, and thank goodness I found them because TriStar Moving made that move as stress-free as possible. They took care of both homes like they were their own, and my furniture is all perfectly intact and in place. They were fantastic, and they took a lot of pride in doing it, and that's why I love telling you about my friends at TriStar Movers. They have a brand new state-of-the-art storage facility, and when I mean brand new, I mean brand spanking new in Mount Juliet. That's right. TriStar Moving. Give them a call, 615-640-1219, or visit their website, nashvillemoving.org/radio, where they'll give you 5% off your entire move. That's TriStar Moving, 615-640-1219, nashvillemoving.org/radio. TriStar Moving, my official movers.
Now it's dropped, and the puck comes back to the right point. Left side, Yossi, a shot knocked down in front. And the rebound swept a little bit wide by Johansson. Gronlund for Yossi. Up high. Redirected to score! Ryan Johansson on a 5-on-3 power play. It's 3-1 Nashville.
I felt so good at 3-1 with the Do More crew on the power play. And I just said at that point, it's got to be 3-1 going to the break. It's got to be 3-1 going to the break. I told you, give it a 2-goal lead, 3-1 going to the break. It's got to be 3-1 going to the break, unless Predators want to score a fourth or fifth goal. And then Ben Harper and Matt Benning can't get the puck out. Benning gets called for a penalty. Matthias Ekholm turns the puck over. Goal. Roman Yossi, at that point, still in the game, on the bench, because he doesn't play in the penalty kill. So there is that. We are taking your calls today, your thoughts on the Predators. Again, this is your team. It's your reaction. Listen to the game every weekday for your chance to win $1,000. It's the game's 1K payday presented by Kentucky Kingdom and Hurricane Bay. Listen for keywords at 9, noon, and 3. When you hear it, go to thegamenashville.com, enter the keyword for a shot at $1,000. Let's go to Zachary, who has been waiting patiently and is up next here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Go ahead, Zachary.
Hey, so earlier in the season, there was so much emphasis on youth and speed in the game, and last night when it mattered most, Ellie Tolvanen gets taken out, which didn't really make much sense. The Predators ended up losing that game, which I'm sure, it didn't matter that much. But I just wanted to see, does that affect who the Predators protect when it comes to the expansion draft, or no?
So I looked at it today. Thank you for your call, Zachary. Adam Vingan linked to this thing to Cap Friendly, where you can play around with who you want to protect. There's not enough people on this team I want to protect. I'll be honest with you. Like, if I were to protect, like, the guys I have to protect, and I don't want to get into expansion draft talk because we'll have enough time to do that. And, I already hate expansion draft talk.
We've got a whole lot of it coming up.
You lose one player. That's it. And for the most part, it's a guy you probably don't. But, like, I ended up protecting 5 defensemen. So, now, again, I believe in Fabro. I have no idea what they think of Fabro. And not only that, I have no idea what Fabro thinks of them, which at least should be a part of the equation too. But I protected Fabro, and I protected Carrier, and I protected Ekholm, and I protected Yossi, and I think I protected somebody else. I don't know. But I, again, I don't know. I don't, if you lose Rocco Grimaldi or you lose.
The city would be very sad if it lost Rocco Grimaldi.
I can deal without that. Christopher is up next here on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Thank you. Go ahead, Christopher.
Yeah, I still am not clear on why John Hines is our coach. I mean, he was hired because David Poile's buddy Ray Shiro said, hey, yeah, he's a great coach. You should hire him. And I'm like, but Ray, you just fired him. So if he's such a great coach, why should I hire him?
I got so much flack for asking that question. Thank you, Christopher. I got so much flack for asking that question at the press conference because I heard the same thing. The day they hired Hines, and I was very skeptical of the hire. I mean, I think Hines has done some good stuff. Like, I know that we've piled on him a lot the last couple of days, and obviously he has, I would say, felt the need to maybe pile back a little bit. But I mean, Hines has done some good things. Like, and again, this is all what you guys want to believe. Hines did a good job this year, this season, this series. I have my serious doubts. I mean, I don't want to get into this because I feel like it's a can of worms. And while we're not against opening cans of worms on this show because, well, we've opened many a can over our time. I mean, like, Laviolette did things I disagreed with, but I never think that I literally questioned every single move like it feels like I am with Hines. I mean, like, at least with Laviolette, there was some sort of a reason behind it, or you could see it play out why he wanted to go that route in these playoff series. With Hines, it's like you know what he's doing, but you think it's the bad idea, and then when you see it on the ice, you're like, what were you doing there? Now, the answer as to why they hired Hines, you're gonna have to ask David that question, and my guess is the exact reasons that David did what he did, he won't tell you, because that's what people do, is they don't tell you. So I wouldn't expect you to get a great answer out of that. But at the same time, I guess if you want to ask, you could. I'm not going to sit here and complain about something that happened a year and a half ago. About the firing of Laviolette, the hiring of Hines. Hines did a good job this year. There are, though, 2 playoff series where I've walked away now with Hines as the coach, where I have looked at the coaching after the playoff series was over and had some concerns.
Now, there's a texter that texted in and said, I thought you said Hines should be up for the Jack Adams. We both said that, and I stand with that.
Should be in the discussion.
The way that John Hines was able to turn this season around from being one of the worst teams in the NHL to having a really great run against a really good Carolina Hurricanes team, I don't want to discredit that at all. He was able to turn this team around and really get we've heard buy-in a lot, and a bad coach doesn't get a team to buy in like that. However,
I do wonder how the team feels about him. I do wonder that. Did they buy into playing for each other, or did they buy into playing for him?
I think a majority of it comes from they bought into playing for each other because they were on the road. They were together all the time.
They were going to get traded.
Yes.
I think that was it. I think they kind of realized, like, hey, if we don't really turn this around, like, a lot of us really could be gone.
And I do wonder if that is separate from the coach.
It could be.
It could be. It could not be. I don't know.
Could be. But I stand by that John Hines did a really great job in the regular season, turning the season around. But that doesn't take away the fact that I disagree with a lot of the things that he did in the playoffs.
I mean, I'll use an example. Like, if you say, okay, a guy should win the MVP award in football, like Derrick Henry, right? Derrick Henry's an MVP candidate in the NFL. Derrick had 60 yards in the playoff game.
Aaron Rodgers didn't win a Super Bowl.
Get rid of Derrick because Derrick's not. No, Derrick was a worthy MVP candidate for the season that he had. Hines was a worthy Jack Adams candidate, in my opinion, for the season that he had. Now, did Hines get worked by Brindamore in this series? Oh, yeah. I mean, oh, yes. Boy, Brindamore, he's a coach. That guy can freaking coach. 615-737-1025. We're going to do things a little differently today. Normally we have at 5 o'clock the 3 things we like, 3 things we didn't like. Mm-hmm. I'm going to move that now to 3 o'clock. So we are going to do the 3 things that we liked from the series and 3 things we didn't like from the series. And at 5 o'clock, I have done this all season long where I've said, hey, if I own the Predators, this would be what my plan is. At 5 o'clock, I will present my plan. And you both have seen it, and you will agree it's pretty detailed.
It is. You spent some time on it.
It is a detailed plan. Now, they can do whatever they want, but that's my plan. But we'll do the 3 things we liked from the series, 3 things we didn't like. That's coming up next. Stillman Company. We're delivered by TriStar Moving on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar. Moving on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, the Nashville Predators eliminated in 6 games by the Carolina Hurricanes. Another overtime game last night. Shout out to Caroline, by the way, because last night I was at the game, and I told her when it went to overtime 3-3, I was like, Caroline, at the end of the show, I picked 4-3 in overtime Predators. You got to give me that video just in case they won, because you know how everyone gets mad at me all the time for the way I pick and things like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I was so ready to be like, oh, ha, ha, ha.
Told you so.
Yeah, now, here's the thing. I had Ellie Tolvanen winning it in overtime. And Ellie Tolvanen could have won it in overtime, but the coach did not play him.
And when I saw that he wasn't playing last night, I almost texted you like, oh, yeah, really? Ellie Tolvanen's going to hit the game winner? At least Matt Duchene was on the power play yesterday. I did call that.
Joe Hansen scored on the power play.
Yeah.
So there is credit there. But it is time now for 3 things we like, 3 things we did not like. And we're just going to do this from the series because it's more fun to do the whole series than it is just one game. So we start with the 3 things we liked. We start at the top.
Number 1.
Ryan Johansson looked engaged the entire series, and I thought he played his butt off. I mean, I know that everybody wants Ryan Johansson at $8 million to go out there and be an all-star center every year. And the truth is we know he's not that. But there is a difference between the regular season Ryan Johansson that frustrates so many of us and the playoff Ryan Johansson that uses the big body, has the speed, and is a legitimate first-line player. If you want to take up a gripe with anybody on that first line, it better not be Johansson. I did not think Forsberg was particularly effective in this series, and I think Matt Duchene had his moments, and he had his struggles in this series. I thought Ryan Johansson was really, really good. And if anybody, we talked about final exam time, if anybody maybe earned themselves a little bit extra leeway, it might have been Johansson, because I think a lot of people were ready to dump him at the start of these playoffs. It's going to be really hard to do that. I thought he played well. He put the puck in the back of the net. I thought he was active. I thought he was physical. I thought Ryan Johansson looked engaged, and he looked like maybe not an $8 million player, but certainly looked like a member of this team that you want to stick around. Does that mean you want him to stick around? I don't know. But I just thought Ryan Johansson played really well in this series, and that should be noted.
Number 2.
Nick Cousins. Let me say this. When we were debating our first game roster lineup and we were talking about who was in and who was out, and I was talking about taking Arvidsson out to start with, the discussion for me came down between Cousins and Richardson, and I went with Cousins thinking they would go with Richardson. And the reason I went with Cousins is because I think Cousins is a better player than Richardson. I think they're both bottom 6 forwards. Richardson may be a little bit more versatile, but I think Cousins is the better player. I thought Nick Cousins in this series was one of the best forwards on the Nashville Predators. He was in on everything. He was awesome defensively. He scored goals. He was a part of the power play. His impact into the lineup was noticed immediately. And Nick Cousins, when it comes to who to protect for the Seattle expansion draft, Cousins has another year left. He is, in theory, eligible for that draft. Now, I wouldn't protect him, but I do think that could be a guy that Seattle takes, a veteran guy who clearly's got some game and has a manageable contract. So I really liked Nick Cousins in this series. And while I didn't like a lot of the roster moves Hines made, and as I said, I would have gone with Cousins in game 1, there's no guarantee that would have made a difference. I thought when Cousins got his opportunity, he flashed. Richardson got his opportunity in the series, didn't do much with it. Goodbranson got his opportunity in the series, didn't do much with it. Even Tolvanen didn't do a ton with his opportunity in the series. I thought Cousins was fantastic as soon as he got inserted into the lineup. And I also think we haven't really talked a lot about how well Cousins performed in this series. So I have Nick Cousins as the second thing I liked in this series.
Number 3.
Saros. And I know a lot of people are going to be angry that I don't have Saros higher on the list. I'm a little worried about Saros. I thought Saros played well. I do. I mean, again, I forget what his save percentage was for the series, but I think in between games 3 and 5, it was like 9.35, which is pretty good. And Saros was fantastic. And let's be real about that third period last night. It could have been really ugly if it wasn't for him. But I do wonder if this is the difference between Saros at his best and Rene at his best. And that being that Rene wins you those games at his best. It's essentially the same core group of guys. Now, 2017 was much better. even though some people want to say it wasn't. 2017 was by far much better. James Neal, PK Subban in his prime, those kind of things. But they had a 2-1 game, Game 5 in the Anaheim series, and Rene finished the deal. And Saros in this series, third period goal in Game 3 by Brent Pesce. He's got to save it. Ties at 1-1. Third period goal by Martin Necas in Game 5. One that we said, hey, he should have gotten out to the post. And last night, I'm not going to blame him for the Dougie Hamilton goal. I mean, that was just a defensive breakdown. But again, Saros was good in this series, bordering on great. But the real, true, high-end goalies in this league are capable of stealing series. Henrik Lundqvist in his prime stole the Rangers all the way to the Cup final. Jonathan Quick in L.A. stole 2 cups. Rene stole a Chicago series and almost stole, or you can argue, stole the Western Conference final. That's what a great goaltender does. Saros was just short of that. Now, I say that. I'm not sure Pekka could have stolen this series. Peak Pekka could have stolen this series. I'm not sure. But I thought Saros was good, so he's the third thing I liked. Now, the 3 things I didn't like.
Number 1.
The third periods. I don't know why Carolina almost dominated every third period in this series. But they won Game 1 3-0. They won Game 2 2-0. They tied in Games 3 and 4 1-1 in the third period. Those happen to be the 2 games the Predators won. And they were 1-0 in Game 5 and 1-0 in Game 6. I don't know what it was about the third period. Were the Predators packing it in with a lead? Maybe. Was Brenda Moore just emptying the barrel and they have more talented players? Maybe. Was the high-end forward in the playoffs, the Sebastian Ahos, the Nino Niederreiters, the Tara Vinans, the Trocheks, the Stalls, was that why? They were pretty much even all throughout the rest of the series. But in the third periods, when the going gets tough, when it matters the most, the Canes absolutely dominated the Predators in the third periods in this series.
I think one key thing that you just said was the only games that they won were the only games that they were tied in the third period. That third period is so key. They had that insurance goal last night. They were up by 2 goals. The insurance goal that we needed in Game 5 to feel more comfortable about winning that game. They had that, and they blew it in the third period.
Think about this. They were tied 2-2 at the end of 2 periods in Game 1. If they win that period, they win the game.
Mm-hmm.
They were down 1-0 going to the third period of Game 2. They win that period, it goes to overtime, or they win the game. They tied 3 and 4, won both games. They lost 1-0 in the third period in Game 5. You win that period, you win the game. They're up 3-2 going to the third period last night. You win that period, you win the game. Third period was the story of the entire series. And again, the biggest question David Poile has to ask himself, or whomever is making the decision on David Poile has got to ask themselves, is why the Predators were so outplayed in the third period of this series.
Number 2.
The second thing I didn't like were the coaching decisions with the lineups and the power play and penalty kill in this series. Specifically the penalty kill. You will never explain to me. I will go to my grave not understanding why Roman Josi is not a penalty killer on the Nashville Predators. I do not understand this. Why Ben Harper is a penalty killer and Roman Josi's not. I do not understand why Ben Harper, a flat-footed, not physical, can't skate, can't handle the puck defenseman, was in the lineup. You'll never explain that to me. I will never understand. Why was Ellie Tolvanen dropped from the lineup last night? And not only that, I do fear that there are long-lasting ramifications from these coaching decisions. I do wonder how the players feel about the coaching decisions made in this series, because they felt questionable on the front end, and then at the end we really look at them and say, how did that happen? 2 weeks ago on a Fireball Hot Take Friday, before the start of the series, Hines hinted on the morning show that he thought that he was going to scratch Ellie Tolvanen, and we said, don't do it. Don't do it. And that was first guessing. I thought that there were some mind-boggling coaching decisions in this series, and that was the second thing I didn't like.
Number 3.
Now, this is something that eventually somebody's going to have to look in the mirror and explain to me what this means. But this is 3 straight first-round exits. And after every single first-round exit, which, by the way, all were with one game left in the series, Game 6 against Dallas, Game 4, I feel like you leave the series with more questions than you entered the series. And here we are with a third straight first-round exit and still so many questions. It's like every time there's so many questions after the Preds get bounced in the first round. And then you go through the whole year and everything of last year and everything you went through, you go through the whole season, and here you. And how many questions do we have about the Predators right now?
A lot.
I'm kind of tired of it. I'm kind of tired of a first-round exit with, there's going to be big questions this offseason. There were big questions last offseason. There were big questions the offseason before that. And they still haven't fixed the power play, and they still have an old roster, and they still don't know about the core, and it's frustrating. And that's just maybe a personal thing, but it is frustrating. 615-737-1025. Corey Curtis, News 2, will join us next. His reaction to the Predators in their series loss to the Carolina Hurricanes. That's next. We're live from the wholesaling studio powered by RumbleOn.com on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. The hockey season may be over, but it's wedding season for all of us. And there's no better way to celebrate than with ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. That's right. You know what I'm talking about. Fireball Whiskey, no better way to ignite the night and enjoy the great summer that is upon us than with Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Ignite the night. Please do it responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. Stillman Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025 The Game. Nashville Sounds Baseball. We don't want to forget about the Sounds. By the way, I went last weekend. I will tell you, I missed a summer of no Sounds baseball. ESPN 94.9 is the home for Sounds baseball. Tonight, the Sounds will take on the Columbus Clippers. Pregame 5:50, first pitch 6:05. Sounds baseball on ESPN 94.9, presented by Farm Bureau Health Plans and 312 Pizza Company. No more hockey. The Predators are out after another Game 6 series loss in the playoffs in overtime, essentially the third year in a row that has happened. And as I just said, one of the most frustrating aspects is that once again, I feel like there are more questions than you entered the series with now going forward. Corey Curtis joins us now from News 2 on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Corey, what do you think about the Predators and their immediate future and everything else? What did you learn from this Carolina series?
Well, look, I learned that making the playoffs was worth it, because they competed. And we learned that this team has its identity back. And the trajectory, even though they lost, is still headed in the right direction, because at least they come to play and play hard every night now, which is not something we could say the last couple of years when we were just wondering what the heck we were watching. So I don't know if I would call this hard or not. To me, this is the hard part, getting the team playing the right way again. Now you got to tweak things to get yourself better to where you can take the next step.
So I don't want to just jump off and say I disagree with you, but I almost worry if I look at 3 years in a row, bounced in the first round, and not using that as a barometer.
They're nothing alike. They're nothing alike. Nothing. I was at the Dallas series. That was putrid. This was not putrid. This was 6 rock'em sock'em games where they had a chance to win all of them, okay, against a really good team. You cannot compare this year to last year and the year before.
So I guess my theory, though, is I wonder if this group, without Pekka Rinne playing at his best, without the peak Pekka Rinne, is that what this group is a max out of a first-round team? That they are essentially a first-round team. Because I agree with you, they played hard, but, again, first round, and I don't see the high-end talent on this team.
Well, and you know what? This is what I agree with, Jared. I think that is the correct statement. I think with the right matchups and, finishing a little bit higher in the standings, then they can be a team that gets past the first round.
I think we lost Corey. And I just finally got him to agree with me.
That's, the phone lines were probably like, nope, nope, not today.
They said, no,
you're not allowed to agree today.
It was too much. It sounds like Corey, though, is going with the glass half full approach, which I said today you are totally allowed to have. Is Corey there? No, we'll get Corey back. Corey has the glass half full approach. Am I a hater for not having that same approach?
No, I don't think so. I think that I have a little bit of both. A glass half full and also glass half empty. And I don't know if that's, just being too critical of the team. I don't know if that's being too cynical. But, enjoy a fun season. Enjoy the turnaround. But it's hard to enjoy it if you think that you're going to just keep the same team and keep doing the exact same things year after year and just getting out of the playoffs in the first round. That's disheartening to me.
That's the tough part is, again – but, again, is that high-end talent there? Corey Curtis is back with us. Corey, you were just starting to agree with me and your phone cut out. I think it was, Cricket Wireless saying, no, we can't do that. We can't do agreeing with Jared, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Their first line just isn't the first line that, Tampa has Stamkos. Carolina has Stahl and Aho and, Sidney Crosby and Yevgeny Malkin. Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves. These are the teams that have won the Cup, right? And they've got these elite players up front, Alexander Ovechkin. And, when the Preds have Forsberg and Arvidsson and Johansson all playing at peak, then they had something. But Johansson's inconsistent, and Arvidsson's not the same player that he used to be. And so Forsberg's good, not great, and you got inconsistent and not what he used to be. So to be a team that contends for the Cup, and also Duchesne hasn't been as advertised. So to be a team that contends for the Cup,
they've got to find a way to retool that first line and come up with the big-time scorer that the teams that really challenge for the Cup seem to always have.
Corey Curtis, News 2, is our guest. What do you think of Poyle? I think that the fans want to talk about Poyle a lot more than the local media wants to talk about Poyle. How do you feel about David Poyle and the direction the Predators will most likely go with him, or perhaps the direction they go without him?
Look, he has them in the playoffs virtually every year, okay? Has shown that he's not afraid to make changes. Just hasn't hoisted the cup, right? And the big thing you can say is hasn't been able to bring in via draft that big-time scorer. However, one of the reasons you have to say why hasn't able to bring in that big-time scorer, because they haven't been very bad. These teams that I brought up, Stamkos, Ovechkin, Kane, Crosby, they've all got something in common. They were all drafted like first or second overall, and their teams were awful for a few years to get them. And so that's one of the things that's prevented the Preds from having that elite scorer on their roster. And I guess if you're saying, are you making an excuse for David Poyle? Maybe. Maybe I am. He's tried to bring in that elite scorer. He's paid for it. He's traded for it. He hasn't been able to do it. I guess I feel like David Poyle always has a plan. I always feel like it's a reasoned plan, and he makes the moves that he thinks he needs to make. So, again, I sit down with him and I say, David, what's your plan? And if I agree with it, then we move forward together. If I don't, then we have something to talk about. But I have a hard time thinking I'm not going to agree with David Poyle's plan, because I just always think that he's pretty much got his finger on where this team needs to go.
So I guess I disagree a little bit on the reason they don't have the high-end forward is because they never draft high enough to be able to get it. Now, I understand you're talking about Kane and McDavid and all those guys, but like David Pasternak in Boston is a legitimate big boy guy, and they took him with the 25th pick in a draft. And I think Sebastian Aho was a late first-round pick.
Okay, there's two.
But I guess I'm saying, like, even Kevin Fiala, who they gave up on, is a much better player now that he's not here anymore. Those are things I look at. Like, I guess I keep a running scoreboard on Poyle of late, and I like Poyle. Like, I do. Like, I'm sure that people think
that's got nothing to do with it, whether you don't like him or don't like him. You're talking about job performance. And,
sure.
And, you're right. Since he's been here, having big-time scores has been like a trip to the dentist.
But there's just so many things that people don't like about this team. And I know that everything ultimately goes back to the general manager, but the trades have not been very good. The results of the trades in which you give up guys like Sam Girard, or you make decisions like, okay, you're going to trade Seth Jones, and then you get Johansson, extend him, and you don't like what you have. You go after Matt Duchene for as long as you do. You don't like that anymore. You traded for Kyle Turris. You lost a great asset in doing so, and you didn't like that anymore. And you traded a first-round pick for Ryan Hartman, and then you didn't like that anymore. And then you got rid of Kevin Fiala, and now he's a much better player somewhere else. Like, those things, I think, ultimately, the pile-up of that, to me, is what I think gets a lot of fans.
Well, I think, because he's been unable to draft the big-time scorer, he's had to chase them, right? He's had to chase them via trade. He's had to chase them via free agency, and that's not the way you want to do it, because it's more expensive, number one. It costs you more money, and it costs you more capital to go do it. And then if those guys are available, the Johanssons and the Duchenes, there's a reason that they're available, right? There's some warts there, and that's why they're available. But again, you're so desperate for those guys, you're hoping that those warts go away, or that you get through them. Because we've seen Duchene. I mean, haven't Duchene and Johansson both been 40-goal scorers in their career?
I don't think so, but I would have to look at that.
I mean, if not, they were each very close in one season. And so it's staggering to me how far, those guys have fallen off, and the inconsistency, to which they are. I don't know how a guy scores 35 goals in one season and scores 6 or 8. a year or two later or 3 years later. I mean, did you forget how to put the puck in the back of the net? I mean, that's really puzzling, and it's really puzzling when you think about what's going through that guy's head that gets him there. Because, speed's one thing, but the ability to put the puck in the net, you would think would be something else. I mean, like we talk about Arvidsson, he doesn't have that burst, that breakaway that he used to get in Big Finish, and that's one of the things holding him back right now. And so you can see that, but we can't say that about Johansson and Duchesne, and so it's baffling. It's baffling. I get what David's done, and really it's his own product because he hasn't been able to draft that guy. So, I guess if you wanted to condemn him for something, that would be it. He's had to chase because he hasn't been able to draft and develop that guy.
Give me your Fireball hot take this week. Corey Curtis, News 2's our guest. What you got?
You've been here a long time, Jared. I've been here a long time. Professional sports has been here about 20 years, and we haven't had a lot of these guys who started here and finished here. Michael Ruse, David Stewart with the Titans, to name a couple. But Pecorine, is there a Nashville Predator before Pecorine, if this is the end of the line, who started and finished in Nashville? Because I don't really think so. I don't look at a lot of players that I've covered in my career and been thankful that I've covered them or thought that they made my city a better place. I think both of those things of Pecorine. If he comes back, awesome. If he doesn't come back, I just say thank you.
Very well said. Very well said on a holiday weekend. Corey Curtis, News 2. As always, Corey, appreciate you. We will talk soon.
You guys have a great weekend, all right?
Yep, Corey Curtis joining us on the program. And it would have been a little bit more great if there was a game tomorrow night, but that's okay. We can live. By the way, the Indy 500 is this Sunday, and the Big Machine Vodka Music City Grand Prix, along with 102.5 The Game, invites you to the official Indy 500 watch party at Scoreboard Bar and Grill. Come watch the race, win Music City Grand Prix tickets and swag, plus check out the Big Machine Vodka Indy racing car on display. There will be great drink specials from your friends at Bud Light. So The Athletic throws out the reasons the Falcons are going to trade Julio Jones and the things that the Falcons absolutely, positively will not accept for Julio Jones. We'll get to that next on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Stillman Company. We're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game.
I think Julio Jones is probably one of the best receivers of all times. And the only thing that I'm concerned about is we have too many question marks. I mean, he's been hurt a lot. We don't know how he is in the locker room. We don't know all these things. So you're willing to throw everything away for just one guy? And then on the flip side, I just kind of look and I examine, is Julio Jones a good fit for the Tennessee Titans? And in my opinion, I don't think so, because if you look at you just go personnel-wise, you go 11 personnel, you go one back, one tight end, and 3 wide receivers, we still don't have a slot guy. I mean, we keep talking about Julio Jones, and we keep talking about signing these big-name guys, which is outstanding, but you got to make sure that it's a good fit for the Tennessee Titans. And I understand he's a great player. I understand he's done some great things in college and in pros, but he's a different type of player now. He's not a 22-year-old player. He's 30-something years old, so he's not going to be as fast. He's not going to be as healthy, and sometimes it might not just be a good fit.
That was Chris Sanders. Chris Sanders is against bringing Julio Jones to the Tennessee Titans. Stillman Company on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. So I have this from The Athletic, which has 3 different, Tori McElhaney, who covers the Falcons for The Athletic, has 3 different scenarios as far as the Julio Jones trade is concerned. There's the ideal choice that the Falcons would want, the settlement the Falcons would be willing to take, and the hard no that the Falcons are not willing to do. For example, the ideal choice would be a first-round pick and a team take on all of Jones' 2021 base salary.
Well, wouldn't that be nice for the Falcons?
That'd be a nice deal for the Falcons. The settlement would be the Falcons get a second-round pick and a player who could come in and help right now, and the team acquiring Jones would take care of most of his base salary. That's what they'd settle on. The hard no, according to The Athletic, 1, a 3rd or 4th round pick. They write, quote, they want a first rounder preferably, but will settle for a second rounder. Okay. 2, a player who can't help out immediately. 3, a team asking them to take on too much of Jones's base salary. Atlanta simply can't afford to do that. So I'm looking at it like this, okay? What do the Titans have that Atlanta would want? Again, the thing they'd love would be a first-round pick and a team to take on all of his money, and the Titans aren't doing that. So throw that out.
I don't think they're doing either of those things.
I don't think they're doing, agreed. And we said Atlanta's not going to get both. No matter what they want. I don't think they're getting a first-round
That's a tall order.
I could be wrong. You can cold take me all you want. I don't think they're getting a first-round pick. The settlement would be a second and a player who helps right away, and the team takes on most of the money, which tells me there's room really now to negotiate it. What player on the Titans can help Atlanta right away that you would be willing to give up in order to get Julio Jones? Like people say Rashaan Evans, which I would agree. Okay, yeah, just give him Rashaan Evans. But they don't want Rashaan Evans. They don't want players you don't want. Just take the Predators, for example. Nobody wants Arvidsson because you don't want Arvidsson. Nobody wants Duchesne at $8 million a year because you don't want Duchesne at $8 million a year anymore. So who on the Titans could you send to Atlanta that could be a player that would help right away and wouldn't just absolutely crush you? Because giving away your left tackle, Taylor Lewan, for a second wide receiver is not a good idea.
And creates more holes for the Titans.
Agreed.
You solve a wide receiver issue that may or may not really exist.
You trade Kevin Byard, who plays safety. So I keep trying to figure out, okay, who's on the Titans that they could give up to get Julio? And then again, you still got to work out the money. And they said the hard no, a 3rd or 4th round pick. No. Okay, fine. So I just don't see. I keep going through this, which is I just don't see how the Titans line up for a Julio trade. Now, if they had cap space, if they had a bunch of picks, if they had guys, like if they had 2 starting tight ends, not that Atlanta needs a tight end because they just drafted one, but I don't think they have 2 starters at any position right now. Like outside of they have a 1 wide receiver and then maybe a 2 wide receiver. But I try to think they have 2 backups at right tackle. So I guess you could consider that to be 2 starters, but Atlanta's not taking one of those guys back.
If Caleb Farley was 100% healthy, I would consider possibly trading a corner, possibly Janoris Jenkins.
Which I don't even know if you can do that. Like, can you sign a guy and then turn around and trade him immediately?
I don't know the ins and outs of it.
Like, I'm sure there may be, like, that may be protected in the collective bargaining agreement.
But that right there is a lot of ifs and is it possibles.
But I'm not trading a corner. I don't feel comfortable at corner.
I'm saying if Caleb Farley was 100% healthy, then I would think about it, but he's not, so I'm not.
The only player that I think they'd have interest in that could come in and help right away at a position where you could, I guess maybe feel kind of okay is Jayon Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could send them Jayon Brown, put David Long Jr. in that spot, and then you get Julio, but I'd rather have Jayon Brown, just to be completely frank. I keep trying to see how the Titans can end up with Julio Jones, and I keep struggling. I keep having a hard time getting to how they would be able to bring on a Julio Jones.
Andrew from Dover texted in.
Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
Re-sign Isaiah Wilson and trade him in a 4th-round pick for Julio Jones.
Okay.
You think the Falcons are going to take Isaiah Wilson in a 4th-rounder?
I don't pay any attention to that. I mean, like, again, this is what I think ultimately ends up happening. Atlanta is holding out hope that a dumb team will do something stupid. And they may be right. If a dumb team doesn't do something stupid, they will eat most of the money in exchange for a 3rd-round pick from San Francisco or the Ravens. I think or they will take a 4th-rounder from the Patriots, and New England will take a significant portion of the Julio money. That's what I think happens in the Julio sweepstakes. Because I just don't see anybody ponying up for an old, injured, and maybe past his prime expensive Julio Jones.
You think the Patriots would just give up a 4th-rounder and take most of his salary and that's it? You didn't get to send them anyone else?
Nope. Because, again, as I said, either you're going to get something, but you're going to pay, or somebody else is going to pay, but you're not really going to get much in return.
Yeah, because according to this Athletic article, it sounds like they want both.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to get both, but
again,
that's what they want.
That's the ideal solution. I mean, I get it. The ideal solution for them, what they think they can do with Julio Jones. Let's go to your phones. We'll just do that next. 615-737-1025. Your thoughts on Julio. Throw that onto the table now, too. And your thoughts on the Preds. 615-737-1025. Plus, we'll have a news update from Caroline. That is coming up. Go to thegamenashville.com to check out Nashville's best deals. This week, purchase a $100 gift card for $50 of downtown dollars. A $100 gift card for $50 of downtown dollars. Hundreds of downtown businesses are ready to welcome you back with this Downtown Dollars special promotion. It's never been easier to shop, sip, and snack local while supporting your favorite businesses. Get yours now at thegamenashville.com. Stillman Company, we are delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Hey, Friday, we have a news update with Caroline Fenton upcoming, but first let's squeeze in a couple of calls since it is your day on Fireball Hot Take Friday. Rob has been waiting patiently and is up next on the Predators. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Rob.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yep.
I appreciate it. Hey, just one thing that I was thinking about is that there's a very disgruntled first line center out there that's probably top 5 when he's healthy, and that's Jack Eichel. Looking for a place to go, and we need that type of talent. Wonder what it would take in order to get that type of talent here. And if you bundle in something like a top line failure, which we have 3 or 4 of those.
Rob, teams do not take things you don't want.
What? What are you saying that for?
Because they don't. Nobody just takes things because. Hey, I got a shack in Peoria, Illinois. I'd like to sell you. Would you like to pay $5 million for it? No. I have a Beverly Hills mansion for you for $100,000. Would you like that? Yes.
So what's the knock on Jack Eichel in your eyes?
It's not about Eichel. You just said send one of the first line failures the Predators have in order to Buffalo. They're not going to take that.
No, they won't. But what they would do is, maybe take somebody that could use a kick in the butt and then a prospect and possibly a draft pick in for an Eichel. They might look at that.
So, Rob, I appreciate your call. Adam Vingan said about a couple of months ago when things weren't looking good for the Predators, and I did say to him off air, I think they should go after Jack Eichel, and Adam Vingan said he would not come on for 2 weeks if I talked about the Predators going after Jack Eichel. That being said, I do agree with the caller. I would go after Jack Eichel. The third thing is, what will it cost you? I don't know, because I don't know what the Buffalo Sabres think of Dante Fabro. I hope they like him more than it seems like this coach seems to like him now. But if you could make a package of, this is what I think it'd probably take. Philip Tomasino, David Ferentz, your first round pick this year, probably Fabro, and maybe another player. And I'm not talking like a player. I'm not talking like Arvidsson. I'm talking like, Tolvanen.
A player.
Or, like one of the young,
a difference maker.
Yeah, like one of these, like maybe that goalie that they took in the first round last year, or that second round pick after Tomasino, like that guy. That's what it will take you in order to acquire Jack Eichel. Now, that being said, I'm kind of for that, except that doesn't Eichel want to have that the surgery with the discs in his back?
I think it's like an experimental-ish type of surgery.
Yeah, one guy has had it, was an MMA fighter.
Gosh.
So Eichel wants to have it. The Sabres don't want Eichel to have it. It just seems like a lot of drama. But yes, I would take Jack Eichel on the Predators because he is, in fact, a big boy forward. I mean, he is a talented dude, and I would do it. Let's go to headlines with Caroline.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk.
ESPN
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Got a little update from Hoover. Tennessee beat Alabama 11-0 this morning. So Tennessee will advance to the semifinals and will take on Florida on Saturday afternoon. Arkansas will play the winner of the Ole Miss-Vanderbilt game going on right now. Last I checked, Ole Miss was leading 4-0.
Ooh.
Spicy. Vandy boys could possibly fall back in the SEC tournament. So Vols will play Saturday. In final, Ole Miss won 4-1. So Arkansas, Ole Miss tomorrow at 3:30. Tennessee, Florida tomorrow at noon.
I hope Vandy finds a way to. Wait a minute, you just said Vanderbilt lost?
Vanderbilt lost. Arkansas will play Ole Miss. Ole Miss beat them 4-1.
Well, dang. I was kind of hoping we get a Vandy UT final. But,
I know.
SEC baseball, man. I know you went to an SEC school where they cared about it. I went to at the time Big East, now ACC school that really cares about it. I grew up, I did care about Vandy baseball before Vandy baseball was any good. I remember when they were in a regional, I believe in Charlottesville, Virginia, the first time they won a regional. Jeremy Sowers we talk about all these ace pitchers Vanderbilt has had. Jeremy Sowers was kind of the first one of the Tim Corbin era. And I remember listening on the phone. You had a number you could call, and you could listen to the game on the phone. And I remember listening to Joe Fisher call the game, and I was like literally holding up the phone to my ear.
That's kind of cute.
But so that tells you, whatever. But yeah, man, I mean, it's just not moving the needle. I think it's like the pro sports thing here, where if you're a college sport and you want to matter, you got to be basketball or football. You got to be really good.
Yeah.
Because there's so much going on here in Nashville now that it's like at a whole nother level. What's next?
So, weird story reported by TD on ESPN.com. Janoris Jenkins'
I saw this.
Rolls Royce was stolen from the Atlanta airport. He reported the car missing on Wednesday. I don't know why I find this so funny, but he said that he parked his car in the South Economy lot in Atlanta. Who parks a $250,000 Rolls Royce in the economy lot?
So we did this when Janoris Jenkins signed with the Titans.
Like, just take an Uber.
Like, is he a bad guy?
I think he's a good guy.
Well, I read all the issues that he's had in his life or in his football life. Read those on the air, and I remember someone being like, dude, you're like reading his rap sheet. Everything that's associated with Janoris Jenkins is like, he's not a bad guy, but it's all like really sketchy. It's all like really like, wait a minute, what?
Yeah, this was just like, wait, seriously?
Like, because he had like a dead body in his house, and there was that, and then there was something else, and I just remember reading it on air, being like, oh, I guess he wasn't there, so that wasn't. And it's like with this, does it really add up that somebody would park a Rolls Royce in the South Economy a lot at the Atlanta airport?
Like, take an Uber. Can you not valet it? Park somewhere maybe a little bit safer. I mean, I'm not going to say nobody deserves to have their car stolen or their belongings stolen.
It sounds a little sketch.
It sounds weird.
Sounds sketch.
And if you have a $250,000 car, like, take care of it. Or maybe get another one, call that your airport car. I don't know. Just all a weird situation.
So two places I've been in my life.
Jackrabbit.
Two places I've been in my life. Vancouver and London. Where like literally in the downtown of those places, they park like Bentleys on the street. And I remember the first time I was downtown Vancouver, and I was literally like, oh my goodness. Like every car parked on the street is like a Maserati or a Bentley or a Ferrari or something like that. I'm like, this is crazy. Then when we went to London, we stayed, I don't know what part of town it was, but right across the street from Buckingham Palace. We stayed at the NFL's hotel we went when the Titans played the Chargers, and was right across from Buckingham Palace. We got stuck one day because of this Brexit protest stuff, but every car in London was like a high-end badass car. And I was like, okay, this is nuts. They had like a Bugatti dealership right there.
Oh,
like everything was
my gosh.
Like Range Rover was the low end. Like everything was like a Porsche or a Bugatti or a Maserati or a Rolls Royce or whatever. And the reason I say this is because it's not the South Economy Atlanta parking lot at the airport. I mean, you've been there. We know what cars are there. They ain't those.
It's almost like, when you see someone at McDonald's, like order a bunch of food and then and then a Diet Coke. It's like, let me park my $250,000 Rolls Royce in the South Economy lot. Like, gotta pinch pennies somewhere. It just feels like such an odd thing. However, the NFL Network sent out a tweet today and said, who in the AFC can or will stop the Chiefs? Are they going to make another ride to the Super Bowl? Read through some of the responses, and there was an overwhelming majority of, Bills. A lot of people said, which makes sense. But an overwhelming majority, other than the people who said Bills, was the Browns. And I found that very interesting because I feel like, those top three teams in the AFC, you're looking at Kansas City, Buffalo, and traditionally the past couple of years, you're looking at the Baltimore Ravens. I didn't see...
But yes.
Ish, yes. No Titans talk, no Ravens talk. And I want to know why, and are we possibly overvaluing the Browns and what they could possibly be this season? Because they were a good team last year.
Of course they were. So here's the thing about the way that the AFC works is it feels like there are teams that people just either want to see good or they just assume they're good. Like, there will never be an offseason. The Tennessee Titans could acquire Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and Stephon Diggs and Julio Jones and J.J. Watt, and they could have taken all those guys in one offseason. And I still think people would say Indianapolis is the team that they like the most in the AFC South. People just assume Indy is better than the Titans when Indy hasn't been better than the Titans in 2 of the last 3 years in the AFC South. And it just happens all the time. They want Indy to be good. I think people want Cleveland to be good. I mean, the pandemonium for Cleveland 2 years ago after they acquired Odell Beckham and all those other guys was, oh, my God. I remember Jim Nantz, Tony Romo did the first game at Cleveland that year. It was the Titans. And the Titans went in there and kicked their rear ends. And I knew it because it was the Cleveland thing was totally phony and fake, and it was all Cleveland couldn't beat Kansas City last year when Kansas City played without Patrick Mahomes in the most important moments of that game. That tells me what I need to know about the potential of competing in the AFC for the Cleveland Browns this year. And guess what? Clowney is not changing my opinion for the Cleveland Browns.
And so there was a workout video of Clowney that was kind of circulating Twitter, and everyone was saying, like, oh my gosh, look how jacked Clowney looks. Like, the Browns are going to be sick. The Browns are going to be unstoppable. Clowney's always been big. Clowney's always been jacked. That really doesn't do anything for me. Like, when I see these videos of Derrick Henry doing handstands on Pilates balls with chains hanging off of him, that doesn't really do anything for me. You know, he looks jacked, he looks huge. Of course he does. He's a professional athlete. That doesn't change my thoughts about Jadeveon Clowney or the Browns as a whole.
Well, I just think that I just feel like, you know, people need to watch what Matt Overton does, the ex-long snapper of the Titans, because he's got those workout videos too, and he is crushing it. So I think maybe the Titans need to go bring him back. Anyway, what's next?
So Bleacher Report sent out, or had an article, and they mentioned the biggest questions surrounding each NFL team. And the Titans' number one question that they mentioned was, will their receiving core hold them back? They mentioned signing Bud Dupree and Janoris Jenkins and building so much of the defense, but also giving up offensive threats in Corey Davis and Jonnu Smith. So they mentioned the receiving core. Who is Tannehill going to target this year? I just don't think we're talking enough about Josh Reynolds. There's like a 3 or 4 paragraph article in the Bleacher Report about Tennessee, and they don't mention Josh Reynolds until the final paragraph. They say Josh Reynolds is the only other proven option under contract aside from A.J. Brown, and calls him one of the biggest question marks for the club going into the OTAs.
I look at, you know, the way the Titans are. I mean, who's playing tight end?
That's my biggest question.
I mean, who's playing tight end? And I think that that's going to get solved probably in the next week and a half because June 1st is coming, and I think we're going to see kind of a second wave of free agency. It's like I'm a little hesitant to take a vacation. Normally, Preds get knocked out, Titans knocked out. You know, that is prime vacation time, and I'm a little hesitant to do that because I think there may be a second wave of free agency after June 1st hits, which is coming up within a week.
And Titans fans are really campaigning for Zach Ertz. I've seen a lot of people in the text line, a lot of conversation on Twitter saying, you know, forget Julio Jones. We don't want Julio Jones. We can get Zach Ertz for much cheaper and without giving up a big part of our team. But I don't know if I necessarily want Zach Ertz.
Those are headlines with Caroline. Coming up next, the Predators fall in what was a very exciting series. But is it still disconcerting to the future of what this team may hold? We'll discuss that coming up next. Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving, ESPN 1025. The Game. Predators eliminated in 6 games by the Carolina Hurricanes. A very, very entertaining series. In fact, in 1 hour, I will have my plan for the Predators moving forward, and we will discuss it. And it would be if I owned the team. And that's how I've approached this season, is if I own the team, and then I tell you kind of my feelings if I owned them. And today would be a big day in which you have to make a lot of decisions if you own this team. And I think one of them is potential. Everybody loves to talk about potential. And the reason you love to talk about potential is because it's not tangible and there's no right or wrong answer. People that love math, for example, they don't like talking in hypotheticals. They don't like thinking, well, this is the best case chance we have at. They don't like doing that because there's nothing definitive about it. And so what happens is you take a team, you see a team play, you say, hey, I think this team can do this. I think they can do that. And then after a while, it gets to a point to where you say, this is what you are. You become defined. Marcus Mariota, for example, I was a firm believer that he could be a franchise quarterback. I really thought, hey, if Marcus gets healthy, if Marcus gets the right coaching, if you give Marcus a little help, that Marcus could be a franchise quarterback. Even after his injury-riddled 2018 season, I said, let's give him 2019. Let's see what Marcus does in 2019. But once Marcus spiked the ball on 3rd down and they lost to the Colts, and then Marcus went to Denver and played the worst game that I've ever seen him play, and then Tannehill took over the next week and beat the Chargers, I knew. Yeah, this is what Marcus is. Just kind of, you get defined after a while. Ryan Tannehill, for example, threw for 80 yards in a playoff game, 90 yards in a playoff game, threw for 165 in the Ravens game last year. Titans make the playoffs again. Tannehill can't win them a game. It's going to become an issue. The Nashville Predators 3 years in a row have made it to the first round of the playoffs, or I guess last year, the play-in bubble series, whatever you want to call it. Each of the 3 series were different. For example, in the Preds versus Dallas series, the Predators were the Central Division champions going up against a decent Dallas team, but everybody thought that the Predators, not far removed from their Stanley Cup final appearance or their President's Trophy the year before, that they were still somewhat of a cup contender. They lost in 6 games. The next year, coach gets fired, they make it to the bubble, they get beaten by an average to below average crap Arizona team. In fact, I'll just forget about the average to below average. They got beaten by a crap Arizona team last year, and it was in 4 games in a best of 5. Now, they make it to the playoffs. They play what we think is a really good Carolina team, though I have my reservations about that. I think there's a pretty good chance that Tampa spanks Carolina, but that's neither here nor there. They play a good Carolina team, and they get bounced in 6 games. And while all 3 series were different, the Dallas series was an epic disappointment because it told us that they weren't a cup contender anymore. The Arizona series was a disappointment because we didn't think Arizona was very good. And the Carolina series, you could argue, was an encouragement because we think that Carolina team is good. But the truth is, it's a first-round bounce, it's a first-round bounce, it's a first-round bounce. Is this what they are? Like, if we had enough now to know that this is what they are, every offseason after they lose in the playoffs, after the Winnipeg series in which they wanted to keep the team together, or I guess it was the Cup final. No, I think it was the Winnipeg series they want to keep the team together. Every series after that, we've been told that there would be some big changes. John Hines yesterday, to his credit, did not hide away from the idea of changes. The players, it felt like they were lobbying to not make big changes. Hines, I don't think, shied away from it. But we were told big changes after Dallas. They traded away P.K. Subban. They added Matt Duchene. Didn't make much of a difference. We were told big changes after last year. They changed the bottom of the roster. Austin Watson's gone. Nick Bonino's gone. Colin Blackwell's gone. Kyle Turris is gone. Yannick Weber's gone. But it's still kind of the same team. They haven't had their end-of-the-year press conference. I'm guessing that will happen next week. I'm guessing you will hear that there will be big changes again. And I don't know how big the changes they want to make are. I know it's going to be hard to make some big changes. You want to get rid of Johansson or Duchesne? It's going to be hard. You want someone to take on Arvidsson's contract because of the length? It's not going to be easy. So it's going to be tough, but I'm sure we'll be told there will be big changes. But again, is this group maxed out on the first round? Corey Curtis argued on the show earlier today that he doesn't think that they're maxed out. He is encouraged by how they went toe-to-toe with Carolina, and that is his right to feel that way. But I'm not sure I feel that way. And again, I always approach things by if I owned the team. And if I owned the team, I would wonder, is this group maxed out at being a first-round team? Again, look at your division. And not just your division now, but look at your division when you get back to normal. Your division right now has a really good Colorado team probably at the top. A St. Louis team that knows we got to make some big changes if we want to be competitive again, but 2 years removed from winning the Cup. A Minnesota team that is playing really, really well right now with young players and a good coach. And a Dallas team that was injured this past season but made it to the Cup final last year. Is this group better than that? Can this group compete with that? Because again, in order, when things get back to normal, in order to make it far in the playoffs, you've got to be able to get out of your own division. We know in our hearts this Predators team would not have been able to compete with Tampa Bay in a best-of-7 series. With the high-end scoring Tampa Bay has, this team would have had no chance in a series against them. Is that because this is what they are? They're a first-round team? That's their max? We always talk about best-case scenario. Is best-case scenario that they're a first-round team? I think it's worth discussing. Because before you can go any further as to what's needed for this group, don't you have to kind of define what they are? 2 years ago when they lost to Dallas, we thought they were a Central Division champion, Cup contender that just needed a little more offense. Out goes PK Subban, in comes Matt Duchene. That wasn't the fix. Last year we thought the Predators needed to be harder to play against. Get back to the old ways. They are harder to play against. This series is an example of it. Out in the first round. Is this what they are? A first-round team? And ask yourself this, 3 years in a row in the first round. Do you really want to keep everything together or keep most of it together at the highest level in order to make the first round next year? Or would you take the risk on being bad if it gave you the opportunity to be good in the future? And those are all things that they have to weigh. I think I know how the people that currently make decisions over there think now. And I'm talking about David Poile. I don't think David wants to have a big, huge reconstruction effort. But if you're maxed out at a first-round playoff team, isn't that kind of necessary? And if I own the team, that would be something that I think of. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Are they a first-round team? Did this series prove they're a first-round team? Or, like Corey Curtis said, do you think that there's potential for more? 615-737-1025. Plus, the message I felt a little different from Coach Hines after the game and the players after the game last night, we will discuss. We are live from the Wholesaling Studio, powered by RumbleOn.com on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's ESPN 1025, The Game. Ryan Ellis talked about how he's optimistic about this group going forward, and Ryan Johansson said he feels like the group is close. Do you share a similar sentiment after the turnaround this year and the way you played against a really good Carolina team, or do you think there's still a lot of work to be done for this organization going forward?
Well, I would say this. I say the last 2.5 months of the season, since March 11th when we went on that road trip, and then, the push we had down the stretch, and I think the competitiveness, we had collectively as a team through that series to be able to get ourselves in, was really, it gave us an opportunity. But now, we're here and we're having an end of the season press conference. So there is work to be done. There's work to be done in the off season, and we've got to elevate. We've got to elevate individually, elevate as a team and organization to be able to get ourselves past this point.
There you go. That was John Hines last night saying we've got to elevate as individuals, elevate as a team. Notice he did not say, I think this group is ready to go out there and compete for a cup. Yeah, not that, a coach would play his cards like that, and not that it's not really Hines' place to say that, I would guess. But Hines was, I think, very obvious tiptoeing last night. Ryan Ellis and Ryan Johansson, I think they were pretty honest about how they felt about the core of this group or this team or whatever they've got. And I think Hines felt a little differently. So this was Ryan Ellis last night after the game when he was talking about the season they had, and I think Ellis spoke with the media yesterday because I think Roman Yossi's probably concussed, and so you want your captain, or in this case the associate captain, to discuss things that are going on. But here's what Ryan Ellis had to say last night after the game.
Oh, absolutely. I think there's a lot of optimism around here, or there should be, because from where we came the last couple of years to the identity we have now, the way we play now. I mean, we just hung with I don't know where they finished, second or third in the whole thing, but we just hung with them punch for punch, and we showed that we're a contending team and that we deserve to be in the playoffs for one. And I mean, in 4 overtime games, like I said, it could have went either way, bounce here, bounce there, and obviously it was them tonight. But unbelievably proud of this group, and everything looks good around here.
Sounds like a plea to say, hey, don't be trading away a bunch of people. Ryan Johansson last night after the game shared a similar sentiment as Ryan Ellis did. Here's what he said.
Well, that team had the second best record in the NHL, and I felt like we were extremely close. We did a lot of good things. I just take another step. We just got to find a way to be a little bit better in all areas, and but I think we can take a lot of confidence as a group in our abilities from these last 3-4 months and moving forward.
So, again, a lot more optimism with the players than it felt like there was from the coach last night, which makes me think that maybe they're not on the same page as far as what they want the future of the organization to be. Again, are they maxed out as a first-round team? 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Do you have a thought, or do you want to go to the phone?
To the phone.
Phones, we go on a Fireball Hot Take Friday. Ryan has been waiting patiently. Our phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, guys. It's disappointing the way they came out. It is what it is. What I'm going into the offseason, Preds are going to be in cap trouble again. What would you think about maybe moving Ellis, Arby, maybe trying to find something for Duchesne? I doubt it, but maybe trying to look at some of these teams. Like I've heard what Pittsburgh are talking about trying to get rid of Malkin. If Ovechkin doesn't resign, you're going to have some teams out there that can't resign guys. What would you think of the Preds maybe looking at some of these players and trying to get them here and trying to move some of this 2017 team that hasn't done anything since out?
Thank you for your call, Ryan. I think it'd be very painful to do some of these things. I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to land Alexander Ovechkin. Like, I just wouldn't. I don't feel comfortable having the discussion of, do you think they can land Alexander Ovechkin? Because I personally feel like he's going to resign in Washington. I certainly don't think you're going to convince Alexander Ovechkin to come to Nashville, Tennessee, and play for the Predators.
Why would he leave?
I mean, I don't, guys leave. Brady left.
Yeah,
guys
yeah,
leave.
that's true.
So but I just don't think you're going to get him to come here. I do think that they're going to have to make some big changes. I have a hard time getting to the big changes, and I will discuss this when I give my plan at 5 o'clock. Where I struggle with the big change element of this is I don't know who's making that decision. I am assuming that it is David Poile who will be making those decisions. But again, I didn't think they'd fire Peter Laviolette when they fired Peter Laviolette. The local media here is convinced Poile is going to keep his job. Convinced of it. I think they probably are going to keep Poile, but I think it should be more of a discussion than it is. And it's a tough discussion. I mean, I just didn't like, for example, I felt like Corey Curtis when he was on today kind of just gave David this big pass of like, well, he keeps trying to find these high-end forwards and he can't find them. So that's his job. Chris Ballard, the general manager of the Colts, if he doesn't find a quarterback since Andrew Luck retired, we're going to look at him and say, hey, he drafted all these other great players at great positions, and the Colts had some success, but he never found a quarterback, and thus he won't make it. It's kind of the same way here. And I do feel like, with David, I think that the David question is valid. I do. And I think sometimes people in the local media, I think there's maybe a little bit of a worry about being honest about David and his situation here. Now, I'll give Corey credit because I think Corey really thinks that David should keep his job and should be the general manager. But I think that this should be the lead topic with everybody that wants to talk Preds is what are they going to do with David Poile? What should they do with David Poile? And I think sometimes people in the local media are afraid to address it because they like David or they worry that if they say that, then maybe they'll lose access with David. This has been a show that has never cared about access. We have never cared about it, and we are not caring about it now. We have not had John Robinson on this show in months. We have not had Mike Vrabel on this show in months. We have not had John Hines on this show in like a year. We have not had David Poile on this show since they got knocked out against Arizona. And I don't, I'm not going to sit here and tell you something that I don't think. And I'm not saying that people are doing that. I'm just saying I think in the local media, there probably is more of a thirst to discuss changing the general manager, but people just won't do it. And I think on this show, I know what the fans want to talk about. The fans want to talk about this. And so I feel like the fans are entitled to at least have this discussed. Every time I bring it up, I texted Chase today. And I was like, yeah, I think, we're probably going to end up discussing a lot about Poile. And he said, well, they're not going to do anything, right? Well, what's that have to do with us? What's that have to do with how we feel about the team? And I think that is a sentiment that a lot of people have. And I personally just don't agree with that. I don't think this roster is good enough. And there's another element to this that I want to get to next. And I want to get to your phones as well. 615-737-1025. Your text, 615-737-1025, which is when you start to add it all up, do you buy the defense of David Poile? 615-737-1025. Stillman Company right here on ESPN 1025 The Game. We'll get into that. And we'll get into your texts. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love those guys. They're proud supporters of the Nashville Predators, proud supporters of the Tennessee Volunteers. Hiller wants to save you money because tax credits for energy-efficient home systems are back this year. So when you put Energy Star certified equipment into your home, you will earn a tax credit with the IRS. This month, my friends at Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical are helping you keep more money in your pocket and doubling that tax credit when you purchase select new HVAC systems or tankless water heaters. They're also offering special financing, so you make no payments until next year. Visit happyhiller.com for all of the details. As always, happy you will be or the service is free, and I know this because I use Hiller in my home and am proud to do so. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. They are proud supporters of the Preds and the Tennessee Volunteers. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today.
Yeah, Ryan, you guys clearly really dug into the identity of this team here in this series. But what did you guys learn about yourselves just with night in and night out battling in these overtime games against one of the top teams in the league right now? What did you learn about yourselves in this series specifically?
Yeah, we're close. We're very close. I think from game 15, 20-ish on, and we saw the resilience come out and throughout our whole lineup, and those new faces I was talking about and young guys, and it didn't matter what our record was at that time, and we were just going to keep pushing. We weren't gonna roll over for anything, and like I said, I'm just super proud of our group and the character that we showed, and it was fun. It was having fans back in Bridgestone, having our city come together again. It was a lot of fun. Obviously disappointing right now, but we had a blast. We had a blast playing in front of this city here in Nashville.
Ryan Johansson was fantastic in this series. I thought he was one of the better skaters, one of the better forwards the Predators had in the series. But I think there's a lot of angst, and I don't know if this is because the coach is not using them right, or if they don't play a certain level in the regular season, or if the expectations are too high. But I think there's a lot of angst for Ryan Johansson and for Matt Duchene. And I would just say this, and this goes back to the Poyle argument, and I see your phones. We'll get to them in a second. I just don't know. Everyone wants to get mad at these guys. Oh, Duchene, $8 million. I hope Seattle takes him. Oh, Forsberg, or Johansson. Who gave them the $8 million contracts? Who traded Seth Jones to get Ryan Johansson? I try to be as objective as possible. And Ian, if I miss something, step in here and throw this to me. But in 2015, I'm just looking at David Poyle over the last couple of years. 2015, at the deadline, he shipped a first-round pick for Cody Franson and Sandarelli, 2 role players on a team that didn't get out of the first round, gave up a first-round pick, and I believe that an all-star was taken with that pick that was available to them. Not to say they would have taken it, but they could have. 2016, they traded Seth Jones for Ryan Johansson. Seth Jones is the number 1 defenseman right now. 2017, they traded P.K. Subban for Shea Weber. Shea Weber for P.K. Subban. That was a good trade. 2018, or the end of 2017, but that next season, they traded Sam Girard for Kyle Turris. Now, there were more pieces involved, obviously, but that may go down as the worst trade in team history. And they could really use Sam Girard right now. And obviously, we know how the Turris thing played out. 2018, they traded a first-round pick straight up for Ryan Hartman. That was obviously not a very good trade. They scratched him in the playoffs. He got suspended, came in the next year, wasn't worth much. The next year, they flipped him and a 4th-round pick for Wayne Simmons. That didn't work out. Wayne Simmons got scratched in the playoffs, was not a factor. They traded a 2nd-round pick for Brian Boyle. Now, Brian Boyle helped out a little bit, but the power play was such a mess, he was not a factor. They traded Kevin Fiala for Mikhail Granlund. Everybody tells me, Ian, that was a bad trade. Fiala for Granlund.
Yeah, it's just tough right now, I mean, Fiala's been good. He's also been streaky in Minnesota as well, But he just shows some of that elite offensive skill that not all players can have. He is inconsistent, especially defensively, but he does show some high-level skill that not all these forwards can do, including Granlund probably.
Oh, sure. But Granlund's been a nice player here. 2019, the summer, Subban for Matt Duchene. It wasn't a straight-up trade, but it basically was. People aren't happy with that. Then they fired Laviolette. They hired Hines. I don't know how people feel about that. Then the extensions that have been given out. Arvidsson got an extension. Not looking good right now. Johansson got an extension. Not looking good right now. Ellis got an extension. Not looking good right now. Yossi got an extension. I'm okay with it, but if I'm paying him $9 million and I'm giving him my first ever no movement clause for a skater that's not named Pekka Rinne, and obviously Pekka's not a skater, but if I'm giving him my first ever no movement clause, I need him to play on the penalty kill just a little bit. To me, the moves just seem to be piling up. And that's where I look at it, and I Again, that's where I think that's where you as a fan have to make a decision on how you feel about it. And that's how you feel, or it's how I feel. It doesn't mean that that's what they're going to do. But it's not the job of a radio host to tell you what the team is going to do in terms of, I mean, yeah, it's probably our job to give you at least a sense of what we think they're going to do. But in my opinion, it is our jobs to tell you what we think the team should do. And I do understand why a lot of people who are inside the sport don't like that approach, because it's like, okay, you guys can sit up there and you guys can call in and say whatever you want to say, and we can sit up here and say whatever we want to say and have no ramifications if we're wrong, because if we're wrong, then we just go on to host the next show the next day. And if they're wrong, then their ramifications are that they get fired or they get – but again, let's look at the paychecks. And I think that that's part of the territory. Being a coach, being a general manager, you're always going to get second-guessed. And I think that David Poyle gets a lot less blame than perhaps maybe he should get.
And I don't want to speak on the team over the past few years because that's not my place. I haven't been here. But there are some glaring causes of concern on this team, especially the guys that are making a lot of money when they're not producing a lot. And Ryan Johansson and Matt Duchene, I think they had a really good playoff series. I don't think that they had a rather outstanding $8 million worthy regular season, and I think that that's a problem. You can't have guys just all of a sudden come out of the woodworks in the playoffs when you just barely squeaked in to get there. You need to see that production all season long, and I think that there are a lot of guys out there who don't play for the Predators that could play for the Predators that can be that for the Predators.
Let's go to your phone, 615-737-1025. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Will is up next. Thank you for calling the program. Go ahead, Will.
Hey, I just want to make 2 points. One, you said you see the team as an owner. If you're the owner and you got Forsberg's contract coming up, do you want to be hamstrung like by it the way you're hamstrung with Duchene and Johansson's contract? Where was he in the playoffs? I thought Duchene and Johansson outplayed him.
Significantly. Will, I appreciate your call.
One more point.
Oh, go ahead. Just go ahead and give it.
All right, you're the team. If you're Cam Neely, if Poyle's the GM and Neely is your boss, do you think Neely puts up with these missteps that Poyle's made? And I'll hang up.
So I appreciate your call, Will. That's an interesting element where Cam Neely's the president in Boston, and no, Cam Neely doesn't. And I will give you an example, because Cam Neely had Peter Chiarelli as the general manager and Claude Julien as the coach. And in 2011, Peter Chiarelli and Claude Julien won the Stanley Cup. And in 2013, they went to the Stanley Cup final. And in 2014, they won the President's Trophy. Sound familiar? They win the President's Trophy. The next year, they missed the playoffs. Chiarelli, gone. Then the next year, in the middle of the season, Julien, gone. They rebuilt on the fly. They kept some of that core together. They let go of some other guys. They traded away Tyler Seguin. They got rid of Johnny Boychuk. They got rid of Dennis Seidenberg. They got rid of Dougie Hamilton. They got rid of a lot of good players. But they rebuilt on the fly. Couple of years of being so-so. All of a sudden, the Bruins are back in the playoffs. Bruins are back in the Cup final. Bruins are back as a top contender. So to answer your question, no, I don't. I also don't think that in Boston, David Poyle would have the same sort of sympathy that I feel like he gets from the media here. Even Corey Curtis on our show earlier today, and this may say more about Boston than it does about here, but they don't give sympathy in Boston. But Corey Curtis on our show earlier today, he has sympathy for David Poyle and the position he's in. Here's what he said.
He has them in the playoffs virtually every year, okay? Has shown that he's not afraid to make changes. Just hasn't hoisted the cup, right? And the big thing you can say is hasn't been able to bring in via draft that big-time scorer. However, one of the reasons you have to say why hasn't been able to bring in that big-time scorer, because they haven't been very bad. These teams that I brought up, Stamkos, Ovechkin, Kane, Crosby, they've all got something in common. They were all drafted like first or second overall, and their teams were awful for a few years to get them. And so that's one of the things that's prevented the Preds from having that elite scorer on their roster. And I guess if you're saying, are you making an excuse for David Poyle? Maybe. Maybe I am. He's tried to bring in that elite scorer. He's paid for it. He's traded for it. He hasn't been able to do it. I guess I feel like David Poyle always has a plan. I always feel like it's a reasoned plan, and he makes the moves that he thinks he needs to make. So, again, I sit down with him and I say, David, what's your plan? And if I agree with it, then we move forward together. If I don't, then we have something to talk about. But I have a hard time thinking I'm not going to agree with David Poyle's plan, because I just always think that he's pretty much got his finger on where this team needs to go.
And yet, in the last 3 years, he's made all these moves and none of them have worked. Like, again, to the point of the caller, would Cam Neely put up with this in Boston? I don't think the media in Boston would say, they've tried for 20 years to find a high-end forward and they haven't been able to do so. But they made the playoffs, so how are they supposed to find the high-end forward? David Pastrnak was a late first-round pick. Sebastian Aho, I believe, was a late first-round pick. Kevin Fiala was a high-ish first-round pick. Dylan Larkin, an all-star taken after him. David Pastrnak, an all-star taken after him. There are all-stars late in the first round. There are good players. Yes, McDavid goes high. Crosby goes high. Yes, I got it. But to say that you can't get this on your own and to just say, throw your hands up and say, well, we tried, I struggle with that logic. What do we have in the text line? 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Caroline Fenton is on the text line. What do you have?
One texter said, if you were David Poyle, what moves would you have done differently this year?
This year or just overall?
This year.
So for me this year, I think it's pretty obvious. I would have sold at the trade deadline. Now, if you sell at the trade deadline, you maybe don't make the playoffs. That being said, there's no guarantee that you also don't make the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, if I had basically without Granlund, does this team make the playoffs? And they were in by a game. Does Granlund represent, I think it was 2 games or whatever, does Granlund represent 2 games worth of wins? Because that's ultimately what they would have. Eric Holla, whatever, Nick Cousins, they scratched him most of the time down the stretch anyways. I would have sold. And that's this year. But I think a lot of these moves, like I don't want to sit here and pump my chest. But, Ian, I think you can back me. I have been against a lot of these moves. A first-round pick for Ryan Hartman, I was totally against.
That's true.
The extensions for Ellis and Arvidsson, I was completely against.
I think that's true.
When they dealt Seth Jones for Johansson, I wanted to deal Seth Jones to Boston for David Krejci and Dougie Hamilton. And everybody on Twitter told me I was crazy. They said I was nuts. Seth Jones for David Krejci and David Krejci and Dougie Hamilton, and I don't know about you guys, but I think I would have made that trade right now, and I think I would take Dougie Hamilton and David Krejci and the last 5 years of solid second-line play that David Krejci has provided. I think I would have taken that over what you've gotten out of Johansson. Then again, that's just me. But, again, it's easy to sit here and second-guess the general manager and second-guess the coach. Right. It's easy to do that today, and I don't want to do that as much as I feel like it is kind of my job to tell you what I think and how I feel about the team, even though, I mean, it's not – I think people think it's easy just to get on the air every day and say, hey, I think that they should make this move or make that move. It's not as simple as people think. There are relationships you build up in this, and there are people you care about, and they may think that you don't care about them, but you do. But you're just kind of hamstrung because you feel like you have to do what you think is right for the listeners, and that's kind of how I feel where we are right now. 615-737-1025. 5 o'clock, I will tell you my plan if I owned this team, the Nashville Predators, to try to get things in the right direction. We'll also take your reaction on that plan and what do you think. ESPN 1025 The Game and T-Mobile have partnered up to give you a chance to experience a Nashville SC game this season. Tune in every Monday to Darren, Donick, and Chase for the keyword to text in to win. Good luck from 1025 The Game, T-Mobile, and Nashville SC. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game, and we're streaming on the Game Nashville app. Stillman Company, 10 minutes. I will have my plan. It's a 5-part plan for the Nashville Predators. Again, let me say this. That was an incredibly exciting series. I don't want to throw away just, the disappointment or the thoughts of the future or the major questions that the Predators have. I don't want to just throw that in the trash and forget about this series that we had. That was an incredibly entertaining, yet at times heartbreaking series. It was a great series between the two teams. So let's not forget about that. But again, my 5-part plan to fix the Predators at 5 o'clock. So be listening for that. But first, it's time for headlines with Caroline.
We're spanning the sports world. It's Headlines with Caroline on Stillman Company, right here on Nashville's best sports talk. ESPN 102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Got some AFC South news for you. We
me.
haven't talked much about Deshaun recently.
We have not.
Been very distracted in the best possible way by this wonderful Predators run. Little update on Deshaun.
By the way, is it a run if you only get to the first round?
Let's call it a run.
Okay.
It was fun. It was a fun run. So ESPN staff writer Sarah Barshop kind of wrote an update about what's going on with Deshaun, and Houston Texans head coach David Culley was asked about Deshaun, very obviously following OTAs. He said, "We have nothing more to say. We've talked about the Deshaun situation. Nothing's new on that." Asked if he had been to the facility. He said, "I have nothing to say about that situation." And people kind of continued to dig about Deshaun. Has he been on voluntary Zoom meetings? He said, yes, everybody's been on Zoom meetings. So not a ton of information about Deshaun there. And when asked about who was going to be the starting quarterback of the Houston Texans, he just said, "I have nothing to say about Deshaun at this point." Now, it was projected that the Watson case won't be deposed until early 2022, which is obviously after the 2021 season. So not a ton of information coming from the Houston Texans there, but I mean, coming from the Titans' perspective, it's going to be really hard to prepare for a team that you don't even know who their starting quarterback is going to be, and even harder for the Texans when there are so many question marks surrounding that position. And they did draft a quarterback in, the third round, so they have a guy there ready to fill in. Just a lot of questions surrounding that.
I think Roger Goodell, if this thing is not going to proceed forward until 2022, I think Roger Goodell has to make a decision by July 20th. So basically 2 months, Goodell's got to make a decision, and then Goodell has to make that decision. And that's why you make $50 million a year as the commissioner of the National Football League. That's why you have that power. I mean, look, I don't want to make that decision. Deshaun Watson could be completely, totally innocent.
And that's why this is so hard. It would be a tough decision for Roger Goodell to make because it's kind of setting precedent for guys that are coming in to a season with legal troubles. Do you have to let them sit until their name is cleared? It may or may not be.
Goodell's never been big on precedent. Goodell has never been big on precedent. Goodell just kind of lays it out as he sees it, kind of like the NCAA.
Right.
But maybe a little bit nicer. You're Goodell. What do you do?
It's hard because, you sit him. You put the Texans in a tough position. He ends up being innocent.
I know it's hard, but I just ask you, what would you
if
do?
If I'm Roger Goodell, I don't let him play until he's clear and innocent.
Okay.
And I know that goes against innocent until proven guilty. It just sends a really bad message.
Innocent until proven guilty only applies to going to jail.
Yes.
I felt the same way about Colin Kaepernick taking a knee when people said that it is a freedom to be able to protest. And I said, okay. Right, and nobody is arguing that Colin Kaepernick should be thrown in jail for taking a knee.
Right.
But whether or not you're employed by your employer, that has nothing to do with freedom. Neither does playing in the NFL. That is not a right. That is a privilege of life. And so the collective bargaining agreement spells it out perfectly. Goodell is the ultimate authority in this, and you just said right there, if you're Goodell, he wouldn't play. It is a mess. I don't think I'd let him play either, but I very easily could be swung in the other direction if I just hear a scintilla of information that moves the needle for me one way or another. What's next?
More AFC South news and a little bit more trouble in one of the Titans' rival division teams. Jacksonville Jaguars oversee the salary cap. It was just announced that the team and Kareem Kassam have decided to part ways. Now, this is the second person on the Jags.
What do you do?
I don't know. All Jacksonville Jaguars said was Kareem and the team have come to the conclusion that it is in our best mutual interest to move in different directions. We wish Kareem nothing but the best, Tony Khan, the Jaguars' chief football strategy officer, said. He's the second person that the Jaguars hired early this year to leave the franchise. Chris Doyle also.
Well, we know what he did.
Yes.
But I would say this. Usually when weird things like that happen at weird times, it's never a good sign. When it was CMA Festival a couple of years ago and Brian Gaine got fired as the general manager of the Texans in the middle of the summer, that was very suspicious. And then obviously we've seen what that's led to with the Texans, and now we know how much of a nightmare that's been.
Mm-hmm.
So good. I continue to root for the dysfunction in Jacksonville, and it looks like the dysfunction is just rolling along.
It looks like there's a lot, and we mentioned yesterday, like, could the Jags possibly be that one team that offered the Falcons a first-round pick for Julio Jones? I wouldn't put it past them.
That could then be like the third overall pick in next year's draft.
Very easily could, yes.
Like, that's pathetic. But, okay, not my first-round pick. What's next?
So Bill Barnwell predicted some of the post-June 1st moves that could occur in the NFL. He announced Julio Jones possibly to the Jaguars. He mentioned here that the Falcons would get a 2022 second-round pick and wide receiver Laviska Shenault Jr. Zach Ertz to the Buffalo Bills, because I've heard a lot of fans, a lot of conversation on Twitter talking about Zach Ertz possibly ending up with the Titans. But Bill Barnwell ultimately said that he would see the Titans signing Golden Tate to a one-year, $1.1 million deal. He said his last season wasn't great. He had 35 receptions, 388 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not great. But you could also blame Daniel Jones for that, because Daniel Jones is not good. So I don't know how I would feel about Golden Tate, but I wanted to get your perspective on it.
Well, I would just say that isn't it time for Golden to move on? Now, I say I like Golden. I played against Golden in high school, so I like Golden.
Whoa!
But let me tell you what, Golden Tate was one of the best baseball players I have ever played against my entire life. And I played against guys that are in the major leagues. And Golden Tate was, I'm not going to say he was as good at football, but Golden Tate was an incredible baseball player. Just a great arm, great range, obviously one of the fastest guys out there.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, Golden Tate doesn't really move the needle one way or another for me. Like, as far as the Titans are concerned.
Right.
I don't think Golden Tate really does much. Sure, he can come in, he catch some passes, sure, fine, whatever, okay. But as far as it being, they need a starting tight end. Golden does not play tight end. They need a starting tight end. They do not have a starting tight end. So every time I hear someone say, what do you think about the Titans going out? They do not have a starting tight end. And until you address the tight end position, I struggle with the idea of what you're actually going to do. Before anything else, tight end. So that's kind of where I feel on the June 1st cuts. What tight ends are getting cut, and are the Titans going after the Titans? So there you go. So I look at that and I wonder, okay, is that the direction they're going in? Those are headlines with Caroline. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. I have told you all year long, if I owned the Predators, this is what I would do and how I would do it. And it's very uncomfortable because when you actually own the team, you don't have to make public the things that you are interested in doing until you actually do them. Me, I just get to play the role of owner without the money of owning and without the actual responsibility. But I have a 5-part plan that I have thought very, very strongly about. And I will share that with you next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. The FanDuel Sportsbook app is my official sportsbook app, and the NBA playoffs are here, and you'll be in hoops heaven betting all the action on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. There are so many exciting matchups, and FanDuel is taking that excitement to another level because new and existing users can bet risk-free throughout the entire playoffs. New users get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. Plus, once you have an account, you can bet one same-game parlay risk-free every week. So that's money line, point spread, first basket score, player points, you name it, they've got it. And if you don't win, you'll get up to $10 back. Basketball fans, now is the perfect time to give FanDuel a shot. Just sign up with the promo code JGM to bet the NBA playoffs risk-free exclusively on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Although if I was Caroline, I'm not sure I'd be betting on the FanDuel Sportsbook app because I see some of these basketball bets, I'm just saying. 21 and older.
You're leading by one.
21 and older and present present in Tennessee. Risk-free bet for first online real money wager only. Refund issued is non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Same game parlay refund issued is non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile/web. Gambling problem? Call Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789. Stillman Company is delivered by TriStar Moving. Fireball hot take Friday. The Predators bounced in 6 games by the Carolina Hurricanes last night in what was an incredibly exciting series. Very back and forth, interesting games down to the wire. 4 games going to overtime. It was an excellent series, but for the 3rd year in a row, the Predators have been knocked out of the Stanley Cup playoffs in whatever form you want to call it within the first round. Last year, the bubble series. The year before that, first round, 6 games with Dallas. It should be noted, by the way, that they've lost in overtime in all 3, and that is just very frustrating to have that kind of feeling. I think the celebration Carolina had told you all you needed to know about how hotly contested this series was. But I've been doing this a lot this season with the ups and the downs that the Predators have had, and that is kind of giving you an idea inside of my head if I owned this team. Now, let me make this disclaimer. I don't own this team. So what I say only really affects my relationships, or it maybe gives you an idea of what I think. This is not what I think they're going to do. I have no sourcing on any of this. It is legitimately armchair quarterbacking, and I am doing it. And I understand that a lot of people will look at it and say, you don't understand. There's also an element to owning the team that I'm not accounting for, which is the bottom line. I don't see the budget, so I don't know what happened this past year with no events for an entire year in Bridgestone Arena and what that means and how important those playoff games, having that extra sixth game was, and maybe David didn't sell at the deadline because ownership wanted to make the playoffs, pack the building, make some money. I don't know. So I'm not a part of those conversations. So I'm just telling you what I think they should do and what I would do if I owned the team, given what I know right now. And I think it's fair to do that because, honestly, we all vote for president, and none of us have the kind of security clearances that you have to be in order to read that daily briefing, and yet we still vote, right?
Right.
So, you know what? This is my way of voting. And we will take your calls in the next segment for your reaction, but this is what I would do. So I have 5 moves I would make. Ian, if we can't start at the top with number 1, this is if I own the team, now that the season is over, now that I've had the full year to evaluate, when I spent all year saying I had no expectations, I want to see how it plays out. I want to kind of, if I wasn't a talk radio host, I would sit up in my box every game and I would sit there and I would watch and I would just evaluate and then make decisions. So we start with the first thing I would do if I owned the team after the conclusion of the season.
Number 1.
Today, I would be relieving David Poile of his duties as general manager. Now, we would go about this in the classiest and nicest way possible. I would not have had a discussion with David about this prior to today. So, throughout the course of the season, I would have encouraged David to do what he thinks is in the best interest of the team. And I would have continued to do that even around the trade deadline when I didn't agree with the route they went. If that's the route he wants to go, he is entitled to go that route. He is my general manager. But today, that would change. And today, we would be sitting there discussing with David how he wants to do this. So, again, I may not love all the moves that he's made, and I do think it's time for a new voice at the top, but I do think he's earned the respect that you handle this the right way. Now, I would already know who my next general manager is going to be. I told you all in February, and I'm not sure you guys remember, but I told you all in February that once I had made the decision on David Poile, that was it. And once I had made that decision, I would have been looking around the league at who my next general manager should be. And everything would have been on simply a need-to-know basis, and not one other soul who didn't need to know would have any clue. And it would have been very quiet. I told my friend at the game last night, I said, if I owned the team and I did this tomorrow, if they lost and I did this tomorrow, you would be telling people, yeah, I was with him at the game yesterday. I had no idea. Because nobody would have known. But the plan would be in place. And I would have a new general manager, somebody that is now in charge and outside of the organization. I think that perhaps when you're in the organization for too long, there's a certain way things are done. I think there needs to be a new voice, a new way to do things, a new way of thinking at the top of the hockey operations. And if I owned the team, I would put the man in charge of hockey operations in charge of everything. And that's a lot of faith you're putting into that person. But it is a high responsibility job. But again, today, David would be relieved of his duties, and we would be discussing how to go about this the right way. Whether it's a retirement press conference, whether it is a honorary role, whether he wants to go out and be a general manager of another team. He has the right to do whatever he wants to do, and we're going to treat him with the utmost respect. And I will say this as somebody who has been on David at times and disagreed with a lot of what's been done. I respect the hell out of David Poile. I do. And I don't think there will ever be another guy like David Poile that will do what he's done for this city. But, again, if I own the team, we've all been there. It's difficult. It's hard. These are tough decisions that have to be made at that level. But that's the first one I'm doing. David Poile moving on. And I have a new general manager from outside the organization ready to go starting next week.
Number 2.
We're going to build on the fly. We're not going to rebuild the roster. We are not going to gut it. We may not be good next year, but we are not just going to blow it up and start from scratch and try to pick at the top of the draft. We are going to rebuild on the fly. The Boston Bruins have done this, and I've mentioned this many times, where the Bruins won the Cup in 2011, and they got back there in 2013, And they got back there in 2019. But the 2019 roster was very different than the 2011 and 2013 rosters. A handful of players, Tuukka Rask, Patrice Bergeron, Brad Marchand, David Krejci, Zdeno Chara, were on that group that made it all the way from 2011 to 2019. And that's how I'd approach this. Philip Forsberg, Matthias Ekholm, Roman Josi, UC Saros, and whomever else that my new general manager wants to be part of that group, they would stay. But the Arvidssons, the Johanssons, the Duchesnes, the Ellises, those guys are on the table. And again, the general manager, if he wants to trade Forsberg, I just hired the new general manager. He's entitled to do that. That's his job as the owner. I'm not going to interfere. But we're going to rebuild on the fly. We do not need to be terrible. And I think the Predators, we learned this year, they do not need to be terrible next season. And I do think that there are major moves that have to happen. And those major moves may result in a step back. They may be the major moves like when David Poile retooled the roster after Barry Trotz was let go. They brought in Peter Laviolette, and all of a sudden Patrick Hornquist is out and James Neal is in, and there are big moves that are made, and the team looks different. But guess what? They were good the next year. So we are going to build on the fly. We are not rebuilding. We are not blowing anything up. We are going to build on the fly, and we hope to be competitive next season, though, again, competitive is not Stanley Cup level next year, but it is in the future. In a couple of years, I want us to be Stanley Cup competitive.
Number 3.
I would not extend John Hines as the coach. John Hines signed a 3-year contract in the middle of last year. This was the second year. I believe next year is the last year. I could see John Hines wanting a contract extension. And you can make an argument that John Hines does deserve a contract extension after the way that he took this team from the bottom of the division into the playoffs this year. But I was not wowed by John Hines' performance in the playoffs. And I also would tell John Hines, if he asked for an extension, which I don't know if he would or wouldn't do, but if he asked for an extension, I would tell him that that is at the direction of the new general manager. And I do worry. A lot of times guys don't want to coach with 1 year left on their deal because they want a new deal so that they can get good assistants, because good assistants don't want to move and buy houses and work for a guy on a 1 year deal who could get canned. But I feel like there are good options for the Predators if perhaps Hines didn't want to do that. Remember Jeff Fisher, when he was coach of the Titans, entered the last year of his deal, and ultimately Fisher wanted an extension, and the Titans and Fisher broke up. And I'm not saying Hines would do that. I don't think it would be in Hines' best interest to do that, but I think if you own the team, you got to be prepared for it. I think Carl Taylor, the head coach of the Milwaukee Admirals, is a decent fit if Hines wanted an extension and you didn't want to give him one. I think Dan Hinote on the coaching staff, I have heard very good things about Dan Hinote. I've heard a lot of positives about Dan Hinote. Perhaps I would consider going that route. But I feel like there are options there, and my new general manager can work with those. And if he wants to extend John Hines, again, I would have found my new general manager. I would have hired him so that there's a celebration for David and everything he's meant, and that we send him out the right way. Then a couple days later, bring in the new guy. And then whatever the new guy wants to do with the coach, that's what we're going to do. But if John Hines were to come to me and I own the team and say, hey, I'd like an extension, I would say, hey, the new general manager's in charge of that. And again, some guys wouldn't like it. You have to be prepared when you're in a management role. If somebody does something like that and they don't like it and they don't react the way you would hope they would react, you have to be prepared. I think the Predators are prepared. I think Carl Taylor, Dan Hinote could coach this team next year if that's what you wanted to do.
Number 4.
I want a plan for the core. I want a plan because I am ready to break it up. I don't have the 2017 fuzzies anymore. And I thought the crowd felt 2017-ish at Bridgestone Arena, but the coach is not the same anymore. The goalie is not the same anymore. The star player that got you there, Pekka, he's probably not coming back. PK Subban was a big part of that team. James Neal was a big part of that team. It's a different team. Even the 2018 team the next year, your second line was Kyle Turris, Craig Smith, Kevin Fiala. They're all gone. Pekka Rinne won the Vezina Trophy. He's probably gone. PK Subban has been gone. This group is not the same anymore. And I heard the players last night after the game, and it almost felt like they were kind of softly campaigning for the idea of keeping this all together. I don't know which route my new general manager wants to go, but I don't need to keep everybody from 2017. I don't need to hope that Ryan Johansson plays at the same level that he did on that run, because I've seen 4 years of him not do it since. I don't need to hope that Matt Duchene's going to turn into a big boy forward, because he's not. I don't need to hope that Ryan Ellis is a first-pair defenseman, because he's not. So, again, and I keep saying my general manager would be in charge of this, but there is no edict to keep it together. There is no sentimental value that I have about the guys on this team as far as a core roster group is concerned. It's time to break it up. It's time. It's time. And, again, some guys stay. Yossi's going to be here for a while. I want Ekholm to be here for a while. But, again, I don't need Arvid. I don't need at some point next year for us to have a discussion. Do you put the Jofa line back together? Guys, for me, I'd say I've moved past that. And now my fifth and final thing.
Number 5.
I tell my general manager that I want a big boy forward, and I want one in the next 2 years. And I know it's hard. It is hard. And it's like quarterback in the NFL. They come every which way. You don't just have to draft your quarterback at the top of the first round, though it helps to get Peyton Manning. Just like you can get a big boy forward any which way. People say, well, you can't trade for a big boy forward. Well, the Dallas Stars traded for Tyler Seguin. Well, you can't draft a big boy forward late in the first round. The Bruins drafted David Pastrnak with the 25th pick. Well, you can't take a guy off of another team, and look, it happens. And I would tell my general manager, you've got to find me big boy forwards. I believe that's how you win in the playoffs, is with high-end goal-scoring forwards. There are goalies in the league who have propelled their teams to really, really deep success. But who was the last goalie that legitimately stole a cup? Jonathan Quick? It's been a while. Think about all the high-end forwards that have won cups. Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews have three. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin have 3. You can go on the list. Alexander Ovechkin has 1. Patrice Bergeron has 1. Those great lines. I want what Colorado's got with that first line. I want a Nathan McKinnon. I want a Connor McDavid. I want that kind of player. And I don't know exactly how you go about getting it, but I would tell the general manager that's what wins in the playoffs. You need a decent goaltender. But Cam Talbot has Minnesota on the doorstep of the second round right now, and he's a backup. Alex Nedeljkovic was on waivers, and he's in the second round right now. You know who made the biggest difference in this series? Sebastian Aho, who had 2 goals last night. The Predators need a big boy forward. And not somebody that you can try to sell me maybe as a big boy. They need a big boy forward. And so those are my 5 keys right there. If I own this team, I would have a new general manager in here next week. We would build on the fly. We would not blow it up. We would evaluate John Hines next year at the end of his contract. We would have a plan for this core. And I would tell the next general manager that it's time to go find that big boy forward that the Predators have not had in 23 years. So with that, what's your reaction to that plan? 615-737-1025, and we will go right to you. Do you think it's time for those big changes? Corey Curtis was on our show earlier today. He looked at it glass half full with how they competed with Carolina. I think that's a fair point to make. Everybody is entitled to their opinion on this. It's your team. So we will get to your opinions next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, live from the wholesaling studio, powered by RumbleOn.com. It's Stillman Company, Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. You know I absolutely love celebrating with ice-cold Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey, because Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There is always a lot to celebrate. It is a big weekend ahead, and you know that I will be celebrating with Fireball. It's a holiday weekend. We're going to be out on the boat. We're going to be at weddings. We're going to be all over the place. Fire Boston whiskey goes down so smooth, tastes so great. Ignite the night. Please do responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fire. Ryan Ellis talked about how he's optimistic about this group going forward, and Ryan Johansson said he feels like the group is close. Do you share a similar sentiment after the turnaround this year and the way you played against a really good Carolina team, or do you think there's still a lot of work to be done for this organization going forward?
Well, I would say this. I say the last 2.5 months of the season, since March 11th when we went on that road trip, and then, the push we had down the stretch, and I think the competitiveness, we had collectively as a team through that series to be able to get ourselves in, was really, it gave us an opportunity. But now, we're here and we're having an end of the season press conference. So there is work to be done. There's work to be done in the off season, and we've got to elevate. We've got to elevate individually, elevate as a team and organization to be able to get ourselves past this point.
That was John Hines last night, and again, am I overreacting here? Again, I lay out a 5-point plan, and I said that it starts with today. That I would hate waking up today if I owned this team. I would hate it because I would wake up and I would be calling David Poile, a guy who has more time than me. I mean, I was 8 years old when the Predators started playing. And I would be calling him into the office if I owned the team, and I would say, David, it's time. And not that David hasn't done a terrible job. He's certainly done a great job. He's a Hockey Hall of Famer. But just, it's time. You know, nobody lives in these jobs for forever. And it would be very uncomfortable. And I would just say that I think people think that I enjoy saying things like that on the radio. I don't. I like the old days when David Poile was the all-time winningest general manager and they were winning the President's Trophy, and it was great. And I guess today is just a little different. So I laid out my plan. Let's get to your phones as promised. 615-737-1025. Mike is going to kick us off this hour. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Go ahead, Mike.
Jared, hey, so I completely agree with what you said, and that's crazy. We usually probably find, as the listeners, try to find a nitpick you, but I actually honestly couldn't agree more. 2 quick points. The first one, big boy forward. We've been crying for big boy forwards since we've started. I feel like the entire team. I honestly would argue we haven't had a big boy forward in our existence. You could try to pitch Paul Correa. You could try to pitch Peter Forsberg, Jason Arnott, James Neal, but a lot of those guys were at the tail end of their career primes and things like that. And we weren't getting 40, 50 goal scorers out of that. The fact that Arvidsson leads our team in goals in a season, it just shows you that we just don't have that kind of forward on our team. I would kill for it. My only question I have in regards to your plan is how would the expansion draft with Seattle affect your way you go, the way you're kind of carrying this out? Would you? And I'll just listen to you kind of spin it.
Thank you for your call, Mike. Again, we'll have tons of time to talk Seattle expansion draft. But as far as my plan of owning the team is concerned, that's for the next general manager. I mean, a lot of this, when Tom Sigerin was the chairman of the Predators, and he is not anymore, he's still part of the ownership group. And I will say this, I don't know Herb Fritz, the new chairman. And I know that Herb has been there for a while, and I think Herb and Tom, they've obviously worked together for a long time. Tom Sigerin, when he was the chairman of the Predators, that man could tell me anything, and I would believe it. I'm telling you, and this is not local radio sucks up to team owner, because he's not the chairman anymore. I mean, he's still one of the owners of the team. They got a lot of owners. But when I listened to Tom Sigerin talk, I felt like, man, this guy knows his stuff. And he told me that he never, ever criticized David Poile about his job because David was in charge of hockey. And that now, if he didn't think David was doing the job anymore, then you got a problem. But he had so much faith in David that he never, ever told David what to do because he never felt like he knew hockey like David knew hockey. And that he would never talk to Peter Laviolette about hockey unless David was in the room. Because David was in charge of hockey. And I think that's the way you should own a team. You should not Jerry Jones it. And I would not Jerry Jones it. Although I think we can all imagine it'd be pretty hard for me up there in the box watching these games, not getting a little worked up. But at the same time, like the question about this Seattle expansion draft, that's for my next general manager. I want Dante Fabro to develop into a top 4, top pair defenseman, which it feels like he's always had the potential to be. But if my new general manager comes in here and doesn't think Fabro's up to snuff and wants to move on from him, he's my new general manager. So that's the way I look at it. I'm hiring him to do the job. I'm not telling him what to do. Now, I am telling him, get me a big boy forward because I think that's how you win. But then again, that's like an owner telling a general manager, go get a quarterback. Well, no, duh. What do we have in our text line? Text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025.
One texter says that he agrees with you and that you have to blow up the core. I think trading Forsberg for draft picks can help find a big boy forward. He's been overrated for the past couple of seasons, and there's no need to sign long term.
I certainly would not disagree with the idea of if you're going to go get picks to build long term, then it's got to be something that you don't want to trade. Mm-hmm. I don't want to trade Forsberg. I think Forsberg is better than the playoffs he had. I will be interested to see, and I don't anticipate the Predators will make a change at the top with David Poile. So I am anticipating David's end-of-the-year press conference, and I do wonder if there was a lingering injury from that injury that kept Forsberg out so long that perhaps kept him from being as effective in the playoffs. That being said, you're not going to trade Duchesne and get draft picks in return. You're not going to trade guys that you want to get rid of to get young picks. And I think that there probably is going to need to be some maneuvering of the roster, some blowing it up. Again, Patrick Hornquist for James Neal. That, I think, is the kind of deal that you're looking at here, where you move a guy for another guy. I guess it is kind of ironic, though, that Patrick Hornquist was the one who scored the Stanley Cup clinching goal against the Predators, but that's neither here nor there. What else we got?
One texter said Aho was a second-round pick, so Poyle apparently doesn't know how to draft.
So that's where I debunk the Corey Curtis theory of David Poyle hasn't been able to get big boy forwards, because there are guys that have been available in drafts that he has either traded out of or that he didn't pick that guy in. And I think it's unfair to judge a general manager by going through every draft and saying, well, they could have drafted him, and they could have drafted him, and they could have drafted him. I mean, what are they doing? That is really easy to do for every draft. But I do think it gets to a point to where you spend 20 years and you don't get a big boy forward, and there were big boy forwards that were taken after you picked. That's an issue. I also think it's an issue right now, and I'll use the Fabro thing as an example. And this would really bother me if I owned this team. And that is that Dante Fabro was a key part of my plan, my future, 2 years ago. Like the weekend that Ian's baby was born. And May is how old now, Ian?
She will be 2 this June.
2 this June. So she's not even 2. The weekend she was born, Dante Fabro was very much a big part of the big plan in which the Predators traded PK Subban away and signed Matt Duchene. And the logic was Fabro had played a handful of games right out of college, including 6 in the playoffs against Dallas. And they said he's ready to be a top 4 defenseman. By the way, he wasn't ready for that. He should have been at Milwaukee last year or on the third pair. He was not ready. But that's neither here nor there. And so we're making a big decision based upon how much we believe in Fabro. And now we're not playing Fabro in the playoffs because he's right shot and Ben Harper's a left shot. I mean, even Joe Rexrow today was texting me, and he was like, that was all left-right. And I'm like, at what point do we as the media not just say, oh, yeah, it's left-right, that's why, and say, you guys believed in Dante Fabro so much less than 2 years ago, and now he can't get into the playoffs? That doesn't compute. That doesn't add up with me. And so that goes back here to the plan, right, which is talking about, well, 2 years ago you sold me that this guy was our future defensively, and now you're not playing him in the playoffs. What gives there? That's a big deal to me. And I don't even remember what the texter asked, but I went on that rant about Fabro.
About drafting Aho in the second round.
Oh, yeah. So you traded Sam Girard because you had Fabro, and now you don't like Fabro anymore, and you wish you had Sam Girard. I mean, this is the one thing that I guess I would equate David Poyle to. And, I mean, look, I would argue that as a Nashville sports fan growing up, I have one of the best jobs you can have. Because I'm not anybody's boss. Like, I mean, I kind of run the operation for what we do from 2 to 6, but I can't fire you and I can't fire Ian, and I don't really want that responsibility. But, like, this is not fun. Like, it is, the job is, I love this job. But, like, it's not fun talking about firing guys. But imagine how hard it is to actually do that job. But the one thing I would say with David is if you had a stockbroker who is your financial guy and he kept telling you to buy these stocks and you kept losing money, at some point, wouldn't you go to another stockbroker?
There comes a certain point when compassion and understanding has to stop.
Yes. And results
matter.
Results absolutely have to matter. 615-737-1025. We'll get more of your reaction next. Again, that's my plan. Now I've laid out for what I think the future of the Predators is. I was very entertained by this season. I don't want to feel like I have taken this season for granted because I have not. But I do think that there are big, big changes that need to be made. Stillman Company, it is a Fireball Hot Take Friday. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Let me make sure that I have told all the people out there all the things in which I need to tell them. 615-737-1025. ESPN 1025 The Game, and the Nashville Predators will host a 615-day celebration at Ford Ice Center Bellevue on June 15th, benefiting the Boys and Girls Club of Middle Tennessee. This all-day event will feature fun for the whole family while paying tribute to Nashville's annual 615 Day, an occasion that pairs Music City's area code with the date of June 15th. For more details, visit thegamenashville.com. Stillman Company, we're delivered by TriStar Moving. It's ESPN 1025 The Game.
John, you talked about guys getting experience in this series. Dante Fabro did not dress or play at all in this series. You talked about guys getting better in the offseason. Are you still high on Dante's future and where he fits in with this organization?
Yes, for sure. Dante's he is a real important part of the organization moving forward. And I think, we shouldn't forget he's a young guy. He came out of college and played, and I think he did some good things. He did good things last year when we were here together with him. I thought there were parts of the season this year he was doing really well. You come down the stretch and he gets hurt, and then it comes in, into the playoff series. And, Dante's a big guy. I think this is experience and talking with him, understanding what the situation is. And we're expecting a really big summer out of him. Sometimes a little bit of adversity when you go through as a young player, it's important to learn. And sometimes it's important to learn how hard the NHL is. And there's always players coming, and, there's always situations that you've got to be able to play at a high level consistently. And Dante is a really good player. He's an unbelievable kid. I think he's dealt with this experience the right way. In my conversations with him, we're expecting a really good exit meeting with him, and expecting a big summer out of him. And, we need Dante to come back and be a big-time player for us in the fall.
That's John Hines. Do you have a thought, or do you want to go to the phones?
Phones.
Fireball Hot Take Friday. Again, what do you think the future of the Predators? I laid out my plan. Again, I would make big changes at the top. Let's go to your phones. Austin on a Fireball Hot Take Friday has been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Austin.
Yes, sir. Dan, I want to talk about the Dans, Dan Highnote and Dan Lambert.
Okay.
I was excited when we hired Dan Lambert at the beginning, 2 years ago, to fix our power play. And, now I can't even find a left-hander to be on the right side of the power play and a right-hander to be on the left side. It seems like we have the most unorthodox power play I've seen in years. But then again, I've been watching Predators hockey for 20-something years, so nothing new. But on that, I think that this year's energy maybe not was from John Hines, but I think Dan Highnote is not getting enough attention, and the way that he has made some of the players go, full force, and especially those last 28 games of the season.
Austin, I am totally with you on High Note, and I appreciate your call. That's why I said that if I own the team and John Hines, I believe, is entering the last year of his contract. And if John Hines came up to me and said that he would like a contract extension, which is par for the course, nobody wants to be a lame duck coach, I would say no. And my new general manager would be the one to handle that. But I would feel comfortable with either Carl Taylor from Milwaukee, or I'd be comfortable with Dan Highnote being the head coach of the Predators, the interim head coach. And the reason Carl Taylor, man, I think Carl Taylor's a good coach. And Dean Evison, who was at Milwaukee before, is now the head coach at Minnesota, might be the second place for the Jack Adams Award. I think he's a pretty darn good coach, too. So you let Dean Evison slip away. I wouldn't let Carl Taylor slip away in a similar situation. Let's go to Jeff, who's up next on the future of the Predators. Thank you for calling. Go ahead, Jeff. Jeff. Okay, go ahead and call us back on that one. What do we have in the text line?
One texter texted in and said Patrick Lane will most likely be available this offseason. The Predators should trade virtually any player to get on our team for him.
I do wonder about this Line A situation, which I'm not sure I totally understand. And a lot of this stems from the fact that I haven't seen the Predators play the Winnipeg Jets in a year and a half. And that is, what the hell happened to Line A? Like, I know that Pierre-Luc Dubois and Columbus and Tortorella didn't see eye to eye, which would be about the 18 billionth time that Tortorella didn't like a player and got rid of him. But they brought in Patrick Laine. And, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I remember the Patrick Laine from a couple years ago who was a bad boy.
He's just kind of, I wouldn't say one-trick pony, but, he's a sniper. But he's kind of got the shot. Wall. He's got the shot, And that when that's on, that's on. But when it's not on, he just has to be a better two-way player.
Which year did he go number one? Or number two? Who was he behind?
16.
Was it the Eichel?
No, I thought that Eichel was behind McDavid, but it might have been. Who was behind McDavid?
Right. Let me see.
It's all very, very complicated. And then you had, but no, I mean, Line A is a bad boy, I will tell you. And I don't know, to Ian's point, maybe he is just a one-trick pony. I don't know what got into him, but boy, he could play. I mean, when they played him a couple years ago, boy, I looked at him and I thought, oh my goodness gracious, he is super stud. What else we got?
Steve texted in and said Poyle has sympathy because he kept the team entertaining even in the years when the team was still wearing their blue jerseys, and they had a payroll of $10 million compared to the Red Wings' $100 million.
There is something to that. I mean, I think that David Poyle it's very Kevin Stallings-esque, although David Poyle seems to have a much nicer personality than Kevin Stallings had, which was when Kevin Stallings was the basketball coach at Vanderbilt, they would never be so embarrassingly bad. He'd coach them up. But then the next year, they'd have a good team, and they'd underperform. And that was kind of typical Stallings. And it feels like the Predators are somewhat going in that realm. So apparently Austin Matthews was the first overall pick in 2016. Line A was the second overall pick. Boy, I love Line A. Oh, I love Line A. Oh, but again, I haven't watched Line A play, really watched him at the level that he was with the Winnipeg Jets since that 2018 and then the following year. And I think he had a back injury, and I'm not sure if he was ever the same player after that. Carolines, and we got a big Carolines coming up next. Today is a big one. It is a big Carolines, and that's next. Is Caroline going to have to savage a beer at a Nashville SC, Nashville Sounds, whatever kind of game is she going to have to? We'll get into that next. Speaking of Nashville SC, ESPN 94.9 is the official English radio home of the Nashville Soccer Club. Listen in Saturday as Nashville SC takes on Atlanta United FC, pregame 2:15, and the match starts at 2:30. Carolines is next. Stillman Company, Fireball Hot Take Friday. It's ESPN 102.5 The Game. Stillman Company. This is a big Caroline's upcoming. Yours truly leads 14-10. Caroline 13-11. So, I mean, even the Vegas-Minnesota game could make all the difference. But if Caroline loses in Carolines, she will have lost 3 weeks in a row. Losing 3 weeks in a row means that she will have to accept the month-long challenge and savage a beer Taylor Lewan style at a Nashville SC or Nashville Sounds game. We actually need to talk to Nashville SC or the Sounds before we do this. But
that is a good
I've got a feeling.
detail.
I've got a feeling that they will be okay with it. I've got a feeling. First, though, it is your day, Fireball Hot Take Friday. We'll take Ricky's call on David Poyle. Thank you for calling the show quickly. Go ahead, Ricky.
Jared, how are you? I just wanted to bring up, I know at the deadline you were just agreeing like I was, it was time to sell here.
Sure.
Anyone who thought this team was going to win the Stanley Cup was shortchanging themselves. He did not get the assets. It's time for him to move on. The New York Rangers have given you a present and gift wrap. Jeff Gordon, probably top 3 general manager available in the sport right now. It's time to make a move. And I also think Hines shortchanged the team with his lineup in Game 1, and I wouldn't be giving him an extension whatsoever.
Yeah, thank you for your call, Ricky. I don't disagree with the Hines in the lineup, but we've been through that, and I'm sure we will be discussing it much more at length. But it is time now for Carolines.
Get in on the action. Put the money on the mahogany. What's on tap on the sports books? It's time to break it all down with Carolines. Here on Stillman Company.
On ESPN.
102.5 The Game and the Game Nashville app.
Oh, I can't wait. Jumbotron, Nashville
Slow
SC,
your roll.
Nashville
Slow
Sounds.
your roll.
Maybe both.
No, we said one. You don't get to change things
I'm
around
just saying,
now.
go ahead.
No. If I lose a month, maybe.
Lead us off.
I'll have you savage a seltzer.
I like seltzer. Lead us off. It's fun.
So we picked Wild Golden Knights yesterday. I picked the Golden Knights money line. I'll recap why. Vegas got shut out by Minnesota in Game 6, but I'm not even worried about it because Vegas has outscored Minnesota 14-11 in 3 of their games. And the Knights were able to limit the Wild to only 1 goal or less. From Game 2 to Game 4, Vegas scored a total of 12 goals to Minnesota's 3. So I just think that Vegas is a better team here. I'm taking the Vegas money line.
Okay, I went Minnesota plus 1.5. Dean Evison, the coach. Love the guy. What's next?
We've also got Celtics Nets tonight. I'm going to take the Nets money line. So the Celtics leading scorer and just all-around bad man, Jason Tatum, won't be 100% tonight. He had an eye injury in Game 2. Marcus Smart, however, put up 19 as their leading scorer in Game 2. And the Celtics still dropped that game. The Nets just have so much firepower on offense. They've got KD, they've got Kyrie, they've got James Harden, and they're 9-0 against the Celtics in the playoffs. So they're just a really, really hard team to beat. And I think that they're outmatched. The Celtics are outmatched.
I will take the Nets on the money line as well, and that game is right here at 7 o'clock tonight on ESPN 102.5 The Game. What's next?
We've also got Yankees Tigers tonight. Yankees money line, and I may even take Yankees against the spread. Garrett Cole's pitching. So, I mean, that's all you really need to know. He's got a 1.81 ERA, 6-2 with 10 starts so far this season. He's the Cy Young favorite and a 50% strikeout rate so far this season. And the Tigers, however, have struck out 517 times in the past 50 games. It's the second most in the MLB. So you got a bad man on the mound on a team that's just very susceptible to striking out. The Yankees beat the Tigers by a combined score of 18-4 in their 3-game sweep earlier this year. And the Yankees are also expected to have Giancarlo Stanton back in the lineup on Friday. Game of the Yankees on the money line.
Let me state for the record that the Tigers do, in fact, suck. So I'm going to take the Yankees on the money line, too. You got to pick some games that are going to make me want to go one way or another. Because,
well, you can pick whoever you want.
But I'm just going to mirror you. If you keep picking the easy games, I'm going to mirror you.
I'm not picking the easy games.
And
I'm
you're going to lose.
Giving the people advice.
If I pick everything that you pick, you lose.
Well, then don't pick everything that I pick.
But that's bad strategy. What am I, John Hines? That's bad strategy.
Whoa.
What's next?
I mean, those are my 3 picks, and MLB, NBA, and NHL on the night.
Okay, I'm going to make one a little interesting here because you know what? We got to just kind of put it over the top somehow, some way. The Anaheim, or the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, are taking on the Oakland A's tonight in Oakland. Sean Manaea on the mound, left-hander. Shohei Ohtani for the Angels. I am going to take the A's. Give me Ohtani on the mound tonight. I'm going to take the Angels money line over the A's. The A's are favored. I'm going to take the Angels.
I'll take the A's. I do love me some Shohei Ohtani, though. Did you see what happened to him the other day? He got scratched from the game because he got stuck in traffic on his way to the game.
I saw that. That's pretty inexcusable.
Poor guy.
But I understand for somebody who's not from there. Again, you got to get – I mean, you need Vegas to win.
I know.
You need Vegas to win, and you need the A's to win. And if not, you are going to have to savage a beer at a Nashville SC or a Nashville Sounds game. Do you think it will be hard for us to convince the teams to put you on the Jumbotron to savage a beer to rile everybody
Unfortunately, no. I don't think it'll be too difficult. I think they're going to love it, and I think it's going to be my thing from now on.
That's going to do it for us. We are out of here today. I did hear Darren say this before he signed off, and I will echo the sentiment. Thomas Willis, who has done a lot of bridging the gap between our radio station and the Predators over the last handful of years, is leaving the Predators organization. Great guy. We wish him nothing but the best. ESPN Radio is coming up next. Nets and Celtics tonight. Everybody have a great, safe holiday weekend. Enjoy yourself. We will see you Tuesday at 2.